Order members, today we have quite a number of schools. Allow me to recognize the following in the public gallery. We have Nun Kopir Girls, Kajiado East, Kajiado County. We have Narumoru Boys in Kieni, from Kieni constituency, Nyeri County. We have Ola City Day Primary School from Narok East, Narok County. And we also have Umoja Day Secondary School, Laikipia West, Laikipia County. In the speakers gallery, we have Kisingo Secondary School from Kibwezi West constituency, Makueni County. And we have Koibeyot Secondary School, Bomet East constituency, Bomet County. On behalf of the House and the Speaker, I welcome you to observe the proceedings of the House. On that point, I have accepted to give to Honorable Mwengi Mutuse from Kibwezi West. You will not only welcome them on your behalf, but on the behalf of the other members. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to welcome all the schools and the students who are in our public gallery together with their teachers to the House of Parliament, the National Assembly, to request them to be keen and to listen to the proceedings so that they may learn and they may also get the necessary exposure that will help them in their studies and also in their future life. Particularly, Madam Speaker, to welcome Kisingo Secondary School, that is from my constituency, Kibwezi West, just near our constituency headquarters. I know is an upcoming school performing very well, and to inform them that through the national government CDF, this year we'll be buying them a bus so that next year they do not have to use public transport to come to Parliament. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
I will indulge the member for Narok 2 minutes as we close on that one.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also want to welcome Ola City Primary School to this House. And Madam Speaker, plus the other schools who have come here on benchmarking. Madam Speaker, as a member of the Education Committee, I'm so privileged to have our children here because I know, Madam Speaker, they learn a lot. Ola City Primary School is doing very well, and Madam Speaker, I know this one will go in record that they've been here, and this will add to their performance. So I want to encourage them to work hard, because that is the way to go. Education is an equalizer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member for Narok. Back to our motion. The next speaker would be the member for Kathiani.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I also rise to support this report by the committee, and I also happen to be a member of that committee. Madam Speaker, modern times call for modern solutions. And it's important to understand basically what is this electronic internet digital marketplace supplies. And Regulation 3 is very clear and has spelled out each and every one of those items that fall within that category. But I'd like to point out there's a lot of business that goes on in that space, even educational issues, things to do with music and games, movies, even transport. I mean, things like those platforms for transport like Uber, small cabs, and the rest. They all fall within that digital market space. But, Madam Speaker, as some of our speakers have said before, the foreign multinationals have not been paying VAT on trading in Kenya and doing their business here. But when we trade with them, we're supposed to be able to pay VAT. So basically what this thing has done is that it has actually leveled the playing field. We are able to, we pay taxes to them, they also pay taxes to us. Madam Speaker, the issue of double standards is one of those things that we must always try and get rid of in our deliberations and in all our actions. I saw recently an example of double standards when Kenya Kwanza have said that you cannot do demonstrations, but then the members of Kenya Kwanza are allowed to do demonstrations. In fact, even some of the members walking around wielding weapons. And nobody talks about it, nobody takes action against them. But when it comes to members of Azimio, any small attempt to even meet 2-3 people, it is faced with serious, serious attacks. So, Madam Speaker, just like the way we are dealing with these regulations, let us ensure that there is a level playing field in everything. Madam Speaker, again, it is also a very good concept because we are being creative in collection of taxes. We are being creative because we've looked at other ways. How else can we collect money? Instead of overburdening that Kenyan who has already been so hard hit by the cost of living. So we've gone out and come up with a regulation that is going to give us money from multinationals. So it's not coming from the local Kenyans. So that's a very good concept. And so we must also be creative how we handle our situation as a country. Even issues of demonstrations, how do we handle them? We cannot be barbaric, we cannot be primitive and be fighting and clobbering Kenyans, because of demonstrations. Let us be creative when we are looking for money. Let us be creative also when we are handling Kenyans. So let's say no further bloodshed. Madam Speaker, I support.
Order, members. As I had indicated, on this motion, if you're willing to contribute to this one, you put on the intervention. I only have 2 members pending, and then we will call the mover to reply if there is no other interest. Member for Kwanza, Honorable Ferdinand Wanyoni.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for this committee for bringing up this because it appears we are doing business here without collecting taxes, which actually is not the right thing to do. Therefore, I think we support this proposal because, one, people are operating outside the regulations, and therefore I think that's how we have been losing the income, we have been losing the value for money. And I want to agree with my friend here. We now being creative. It's a way of looking for money. Of course, this is not punitive. One should not take this as a punitive move, but way of looking for money outside the box. And I think it's also that the foreigners were actually bringing in some goods here without being taxed. And that again is an issue of tax collection. And therefore, I think, Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee and ask them to go to cast the net wider so they can be able to get as many operations coming outside and even within to pay some taxes for whatever business they are doing in the country. And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee, and I support.
Thank you. Member for Sirisia.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me also a chance to contribute on this very important motion. Honorable Speaker, many of us in this country, Madam Speaker, have not been paying tax the way we can see. Madam Speaker, this is the only way to go. And I believe that our country is now coming up, and the digital space, Madam Speaker, is going to help this country at least to collect enough revenue from everywhere, every corner, so that we will not be borrowing much from outside. Madam Speaker, this regulation is good because it is trying to create space for so many things. Even internet has been helping in so many aspects. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that taxes in every these developed countries, Madam Speaker, taxes is a must to every citizen. And in this country, Madam Speaker, many people, many business people have been evading to pay tax. But with this online, the digital space that we are getting, I'm sure, Madam Speaker, that nobody will evade tax in this country. So, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.
Order, members. I see there is no more interest on this motion. On this specific motion, I will therefore call the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank all members who have ably contributed to this motion. Madam Speaker, the members have been very relevant in their contribution. However, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a few clarifications. One, these regulations do not touch on the finance bill that is pending in the High Court. Madam Speaker, as you know, this government is law-abiding government. We cannot bring regulations or VAT increase through the back door. We are a law-abiding country, and we will also like the other people on the other side to be also law-abiding citizens. Madam Speaker, this particular regulation, as many members have just pointed out, will create equity in the market, will create fairness, and will create a level playing ground for all the players in the digital world. And so, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank all the members who have contributed, and I therefore reply.
Order, members. We have the requisite numbers. I therefore put the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital marketplace supply regulations 2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 5th July 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 67 of the Value-Added Tax 2013, approves that the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital market supply Place Supply Regulations 2023, published as legal notice number 29 of 2023. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 12, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023, second reading.
Leader of Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg your indulgence on that of the House, Honorable Speaker, to skip order number 12, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023, the second reading of this bill, Honorable Speaker, because the committee, this bill, Honorable Speaker, is before two committees, the Committee of Health, the Chair Health Committee was here, actually was supposed to do this, and the Committee on Agriculture, and they are still considering the report being a joint committee. They were not able to finish during the recess, but the Chair Health has indicated to me that they are meeting this week to try and finalize their report, and hopefully we'll be able to continue the second reading once they table their report, Honorable Speaker, and therefore beg that you do indulge us.
Thank you. That order is therefore stood down. Next order.
Order number 13, the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022 be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, Article 209(5) of the Constitution confers on Parliament the powers to regulate the exercise of fiscal responsibilities by county governments, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you know, county governments, by dint of the Constitution, have powers to impose levies and taxes on the people. But Parliament is also given powers under Article 209(5) of the same Constitution to regulate the exercise of these fiscal responsibilities by our county governments to ensure, one, that we do not, or rather our county governments do not impose taxes and levies
that undermine the greater national good. And two, there is uniformity, certainty, and fairness in the taxes that are levied and rates that are levied across the country, Honorable Speaker, so that we do not have one county levying certain rates and taxes that are so obnoxious as compared to those of other counties, and therefore make even the cost of doing business in certain counties more expensive than others. Honorable Speaker, this is the reason and the object of this bill, which seeks to provide for enhancement, for certainty, for uniformity and fairness in levying of property rates by our county governments, while providing a secure source of income or revenue for many of our county governments that are suffering from very low own source revenue. Honorable Speaker, members will appreciate, and indeed the country appreciates, that our county governments under Schedule 4 of the Constitution are charged with numerous functions and responsibilities. And Kenyans in our constituencies are waiting for all our county governments to offer them goods and services. And many of the people who expect goods and services, Honorable Speaker, are property owners and rateable properties, Honorable Speaker. But some of these properties, even in major cities like Nairobi, you will find a lot of non-uniformity and fairness in the manner in which people are paying rates. For instance, in Embakasi East constituency, where the Honorable Babu Owino comes from and represents the people, Honorable Speaker, you will find somebody with 5 acres in Embakasi East, because that's one of the constituencies within Nairobi where there are still large landowners. But the amount of rates that they are paying to the Nairobi city government is negligible compared to what somebody is paying for in Lavington on half an acre, or in Kilimani on quarter of an acre, Honorable Speaker. And you also find, Honorable Speaker, in this country we have what are called not slum landlords, but slum billionaires. You will find someone in Mukuru kwa Jenga or Mukuru kwa Ruben who owns 10 acres of Mabati structures and making probably 10 to 12 million shillings from very vulnerable and poor people who he does not even offer any sanitation facilities for. And that person, the rates you find them paying, because probably even the land is not adjudicated, is negligible. Yet a landlord who is in Kilimani on a block of flats sitting on 1/8 of an acre is paying way much higher than even what they are able to collect in terms of rental income and income to themselves. And therefore, it creates a situation where there is no uniformity, there is no fairness, and this bill therefore seeks to create that uniformity and fairness in levying of property taxes by county governments. Honorable Speaker, the bill also seeks to consolidate the valuation for Rating Act Cap 266 and the Rating Act Cap 267 into one, which will now be referred as the National Rating Act. And as I said, providing a comprehensive and uniform legislative framework that will regulate how all our county governments across the country levy rates and other levies that they may be levying to property owners. The bill, Honorable Speaker, also seeks to synchronize the terms and definitions in line with current definitions on valuation of rateable property, current practice, Honorable Speaker, because these two acts, the Valuation for Rating Act Cap 266 and Cap 267 of the Rating Act, refer to definitions and things that were done back then. But as with all other professions, even in the valuation profession, those of us who have studied land economics and those who are valuers know that there are new terms and definitions in the industry, and therefore this bill seeks also to align to that. It also seeks to identify the mechanisms on how our county governments shall undertake valuation for rating and imposition of rates on rateable property to reflect the powers, as I said, that were intended under Article 209(3)(a) for counties to impose property taxes or property rates, adhering to Article 10 of the Constitution on Values and Principles of Governance, Article 232 of the Constitution to ensure there is conformity to the values and principles of public service, and of course to Article 232 to conform to the principles of public finance. Honorable Speaker, this bill will also provide for the establishment of the National Rating Tribunal that will be responsible for resolution of disputes relating to property rating. Honorable Speaker, today, if the county government of Nairobi or the city government of Nairobi imposed rates on the Honorable Robert Mbui, who I know owns quite a number of properties in Embakasi South, and the Honorable Mbui felt that they were being unfair, he has no recourse. And therefore, we are creating a recourse so that the Honorable Robert Mbui, if he feels his investments in Kathiani are rated better than those in Embakasi South, then he has somewhere a tribunal that he can walk to and appeal to. Therefore, we will create that mechanism for him through this bill. We also enhance the use of appropriate technology in undertaking valuation for rating and rating-related purposes, Honorable Speaker. You know, in the past, you had to walk the miles to be able to identify where particular land parcels are. Today, with modern technology and with geo-positioning technology, we can be able to use geo-positioning technology to be able to identify exactly where a piece of land is. I was saying, Honorable Speaker, you will find billionaires who own land in our slum areas. But because the title reads Mukuru kwa Jenga or Mukuru kwa Ruben, and maybe that Mukuru kwa Ruben is a title that, or the description of the area that is reading that. But you find with time, South B Estate or Plainsview has now grown into some of those formerly slum areas. And therefore, the value of land in that area is not as accurate as it was 10 years ago, Honorable Speaker. But with modern technology, you'll be able to geoposition that particular land reference number and know exactly where is this land. You can even be able to estimate the actual size of any size of land. And this technology today...
Honorable Babu Owino, this is not Embakasi. You do not just cross the floor like that.
Thank you. You know, Honorable Babu Owino might be imagining he's in Jacaranda grounds. But we must forgive him because he was just released the other day from police cells. Honorable Speaker, I was saying with modern technology, it is possible to even be able to now, with geopositioning, not actually estimate, get the actual size of land without land values having to go and using very rudimental technology to value land. And therefore, this bill now also creates that opportunity for us to be able to use modern technology in undertaking valuations, because technology also enhances fairness and certainty. And therefore, unlike in the past where you have to talk, what in Kenyan parlance they say is kuongea na chai ama kitu kidogo, to value us, to be able to value land for you appropriately. Now you will not need to do that. With modern technology, you can be able to know this value, the value of land in this particular area, the size is this much, and similar properties around that area are paying whatever amount they are paying, and therefore have a system that is fair. Honorable Speaker, this bill also has identified the role of counties for the implementation of the objects of the Act, which shall include ensuring, as I said, there is fair and equal treatment to all rateable owners, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is not fair that there are people in this country, and I'll give you a case example, Honorable Speaker, of Kahawa Wendani, Kahawa Sukari. You will find many people who, including members of parliament, who live in Kahawa Wendani and Kahawa Sukari, and they are paying rates to the county government of Kiambu and some to the county government of Nairobi. But across the river, you will find people who own ranches within the city, but they don't pay rates either to the county government of Nairobi or the county government of Kiambu. And Honorable Speaker, we must ensure that there is fairness. It is not fair that somebody in Kahawa Sukari or Kahawa Wendani is paying rates but another person, probably because of positions they have occupied over the years, they don't pay rates. Honorable Speaker, now with this kind of bill, there will be fairness. The county government of Nairobi will be able to levy rates. I know the member for Embakasi West, Honorable Mwenje, is getting itchy when I speak about these things. But it's only fair that every taxpayer pays their due taxes, even on land. Whether you own a ranch within the city, whether you own an eighth of an acre like myself, whether you own no land like the member from Kisii County or the Honorable Nyikal owns a lot of land in Karen, so he cannot be raising his hand for me to point to him. I meant the Honorable Elvis, who does not own land in Nairobi, but he owns land, huge chunks in Kisii. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, there will be fairness with this new bill. We also ensure, Honorable Speaker, that the burden of property rating is shared fairly amongst the ratepayers. And that's what I was driving to, that if you have more land, you pay more. If you have less land, you pay less. And therefore, you share the burden, Honorable Speaker. Because the only reason why levies and rates and taxes are levied on people is because you are the people, if you are property owners, you are the people enjoying the services that will be offered by the county governments. Kenyans are very quick at demanding services and supply of goods and services in their neighborhoods. And you've seen, Honorable Speaker, in the recent past, the upcoming of gated communities. All these gated communities are coming up, and the people who sell what they call, in my local language, buroti maguta maguta. And those who understand the language know what buroti maguta maguta is. Those people who sell serviced plots, Honorable Speaker, will market those plots as service plots. And all they do is grade a Maram Road, put 5 poles of solar lighting, no provision of sewer services, no, they will probably bring in one line of, and put one tap to show you that there is clean drinking water. But they never tell you, when you build and develop that property, with time, even if they had a borehole on that property, Honorable Speaker, that borehole will not be very healthy to use or very secure to use for drinking water, because you are sinking septic pits, and whatever comes from your sewer system is percolating into the water that you are then drinking with those gated communities. Therefore, it's only fair, Honorable Speaker, that there are levied rates that will ensure that county governments are able to provide them with proper sewerage. They're able to bring them adequate water to use in those gated communities, Honorable Speaker. And because this is going out even beyond Nairobi and our cities, even in our rural areas, Honorable Speaker, today if you go to Kikuyu, what was otherwise known as Deya Ngobe, because it was all grazing land in the past, today there are Nairobi Ndogos, there are huge, very modern estates being built there, but requisite services are not coming. And we must ensure that our county governments have adequate revenues to be able to provide those all services, whether it is roads, whether it is water, whether it is sewer systems, street lighting, so that, Honorable Speaker, again, our people do not fall prey to the vendors of land that who market land as serviced, but it is not serviced. It's just one tap that is put there to show people that there is water. Only when you build and you start living there, you realize it's only one line of water that came that could not supply beyond 1,000 liters a day, Honorable Speaker. This bill, Honorable Speaker, also takes cognizance of the needs of the county and promotes imposition of rates to boost socio and economic development. Those are the issues I'm speaking to conduct effective public participation and public awareness that now counties, Honorable Speaker. And this, Honorable Speaker, speaks to an incident I have seen in my own county in Kiambu, that without proper public participation, Honorable Speaker, and public awareness, county governments embark on systems of changing what rates they are levying to property owners, Honorable Speaker, And the lack of public awareness and public participation means that even our members of county assemblies appear before their county assemblies and pass whatever legislative proposals are put before them without paying regard to the impact of those propositions on landowners, Honorable Speaker. I have seen in my own county in Kiambu, land that is agricultural and freehold that previously was not rateable. The county assembly in one finance bill, I think in 2017 or 2018, imposed rates even on agricultural land. Honorable Speaker, you can imagine a farmer in Ondire, or a farmer in Maihe village where I come from, or a farmer in Gekambura, or a farmer in Kerwa, or a farmer in some village in Karachuonyo. Should the county government in Karachuonyo impose such rates as those that were done in Kiambu, is now required to pay rates in terms of hundreds of thousands for 2 acres, at times to an extent where they are required to pay rates higher than what they are able to produce on that particular farm. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if you do not have a legislative framework that will ensure that there is fairness, there is certainty, so that whether you are in Kikuyu or Kabete or even Nutheru here, Honorable Speaker, and you are farming, you cannot be levied rates at the same rate as somebody who has developed his land or subdivided his land and has built blocks of apartments, and you are required to pay the same rates. That person who is generating more revenue or more income from rental income should be able to pay more rates than a farmer who is producing food, so that we also don't discourage our farmers. Honorable Speaker, if you go to Netherlands, and I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, that time I had a trip with you to The Hague, way back in 2015 or 2016. You remember, as we landed early in the morning in Netherlands, right outside the airport, farmers are growing wheat. And you find the same in very many other capitals around this country, because there is deliberate policy by government to ensure that you encourage even urban farming. And people who are farming even near cities are able to have tax regimes and tax administration policies that encourage them to get into farming, so that we don't only encourage people to get into what is the creation of concrete jungles today, because rental income will generate more money, but all those people have no food, Honorable Speaker. Today we are crying about the cost of food, but we are crying because of over the cost of food. Kitengela here, Honorable Speaker, parts of Kajiado, parts of the lower Machakos, Honorable Speaker, are areas where people would be growing food if we encourage them. Those who have freehold land, those who can farm. The county government of Machakos, of Kajiado, of Kiambu, encourage farmers, someone holding an acre and can grow crops, food crops, encourage them to do that. And therefore, must be that, not discrimination, what do you call it? Disparity between those who are in income generating activity and those who are growing food, so that we encourage farmers. Honorable Speaker, this bill will also provide for a criteria for the determination of categories of, for instance, rateable properties for purposes of levying of different rates, and those that will be exempt rateable property uses. And Honorable Speaker, that's what I was speaking to. For instance, agricultural land, county governments could classify certain areas where there is agricultural land as exempt from paying property rates, because we want to encourage agriculture and food production. A county government could also determine, for instance, in Thika, that industries are what they want to encourage, and therefore create lower rates for industries and levy more for those who want to do housing and or even grow food crops. Those in Kisumu could decide that if you are creating landing bays around the lake, then you will enjoy lower property rates, so that you encourage investors to come and invest in our counties. Honorable Speaker, we also, through this bill, ensure that there is prudent and responsible use of funds collected for purposes of this Act to enhance service delivery in our counties. So that, Honorable Speaker, there is also a clear, transparent, and accountable system in our county governments to ensure that whatever rates counties are collecting. Today, Honorable Speaker, I had instance about 3 or 4 months ago, I wanted to do get a loan from somewhere. And I needed a rates clearance certificate. When you walk into the county government of Kiambu offices, depending on which officer you find which day and their moods, or what you are to offer them, you get different valuations. Honorable Speaker, this must be a thing of the past. Any Kenyan should be able to know, even online, how much rates are your property subject to, so that you know at the beginning of the year, my 1 acre property in Karachuonyo, I will pay 10,000 shillings. And therefore, it will not be at the whims of a revenue officer down in the county government, because this is what is happening in all our counties. And now speaking about Kiambu, I'm only making reference to Kiambu because that's where I come from. Even in Nairobi County, and I'm a property owner in Nairobi County also, so I know. You will get various amounts depending on who, which day, and the mood they are in, and whether you look like someone they could talk to. So they give you a bill depending on who you are and how you approach them. So we want that to be a thing of the past, so that Kenyans transparently are able to know, even if I am able to, through geopositioning, tag onto a land reference number in Lodwar town, I should be able to know online how much rates will I pay. So that even banks, when they are advancing credit to members of the public, they're even able to know the approximate value based on the rates that are being paid. Because today, Honorable Speaker, again, many banks are holding titles as security that are worthless, because people colluded with valuers, they colluded with government officers, banks got collateral for land that is basically valueless. But with a proper system like this that will be created under this rating act, Honorable Speaker, we'll be able to put some of these things behind us. Honorable Speaker, I did speak about the need for effective public participation and public awareness to ensure that members of the public, again, Honorable Speaker, know, so that even as I buy land in Narok County to grow wheat, I should know what are the rates that the county government of Narok will levy on that land, and be able to do my arithmetics and be able to determine whether I'll make money from the wheat growing. If I want to develop a block of flats in Kitengela or in Mlolongo, I'll be able to know what are the rates that are chargeable, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, we also, in a way, encourage foreign direct investments into our counties, both from foreign and domestic investors, Honorable Speaker. And this is something that we must continuously encourage people to invest across the country. And for that to happen, Honorable Speaker, there must be certainty on what is rateable, what is not rateable, what rates people are going to pay. Honorable Speaker, lastly, this bill proposes to introduce 4 forms of rating. This will be the annual rent of value rate, where land is rated annually, and you know with certainty this is how much you pay annually. There is an area rate, as I was saying, even now with global positioning and modern technology, you should be able to determine on what size of land you pay what amount, whether it's per square meter or per hectare or per square foot. Then an improved site value rate and a site value rate in combination with an improvement rate. Because, Honorable Speaker, it's also not fair. There are properties even within CBD that are not developed, and therefore there is no improvement on that land. But you find on a property that has a 20-story building where someone is collecting about 500 million shillings in rental income, they are paying an equivalent rate with that person who is using his land within the CBD as a parking lot, or giving that land to our market traders to use for the Maasai market on Tuesdays and the day they were doing. So there must be that distinction on the area, whether land is improved, whether it is not improved. And I was speaking, Honorable Speaker, even in the rural constituencies and rural areas and rural counties, even on land that is agricultural and non-agricultural land. And I want to believe, Honorable Speaker, as we come to the third reading, the Committee of Lands will consider bringing amendments to make sure that there's also a clear distinction between agricultural land. And Honorable Speaker, I am very particular on agriculture, and I have said this deliberately, Honorable Speaker, in moving this bill, because one of the greatest risks that we face in this country today is that of food insecurity. The housing agenda, Honorable Speaker, as vilified as it was being vilified, Honorable Speaker, in a way addresses the question of food insecurity also. Because we are fragmenting our land, Honorable Speaker. Before, some years back, the lowest fragmentation was 50 by 100, which is an eighth of an acre. Today, Honorable Speaker, I have seen in my own county fractions of 20 by 80. And they have titles, Honorable Speaker. They are 40 by 80s. Those so-called gated estates, they are telling people, we are selling you quarter an acre, but they are selling you a 40 by 80, some 70 by 30. In Embakasi, they will tell you they are all 33 by 66. And Honorable Speaker, those are the issues we are speaking to, that we must have those distinctions, Honorable Speaker, so that when we come to the third reading, we are able to ensure there is actual fairness. Because the more we fragment our land, the more we expose ourselves to food insecurity. If we are able to safeguard our land from further fragmentation and secure more of our land for use for agricultural purposes, encourage our farmers by giving them lower property rates on agricultural land, we encourage even more of our young people to get into food production and agriculture and secure food security, but not this business that we are now in of what I call Buroti Maguta Maguta, where every free and open space in this country today now is up for fragmentation and subdivision for housing estates that are even not planned and defined. Honorable Speaker, therefore, this bill will be able to address some of those things. The bill, Honorable Speaker, has also provided for the appointment and powers of a valuer to undertake preparation of valuation roles, and also introduce the office of a chief government valuer with respect to standardization and harmonization on preparation and implementation of the valuation roles across the counties. Because, Honorable Speaker, as I said, we leave it to the whims of revenue officers in our counties to determine what rates to levy on property owners. Honorable Speaker, that becomes a very good avenue for corruption. Which officer you find on which day, you will get a different figure. And they all get those figures from the system, funny enough. I don't know what they do to the system. Some will indicate for you on a piece of paper. Some will generate in a system. I don't know how they're able to change those systems. So we want a system where we have a chief government valuer who will be able to rationalize, so that based on the value of land in different parts of the country, the chief government valuer now will be able to standardize and harmonize the valuation roles across the counties, so that one county doesn't overtax people as opposed to another, and therefore make some of our counties very unfavorable or unattractive for investments, whether by local or foreign investors. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, Part 4 of this bill contains provisions on the valuation for rating, declaration of rateable areas, and methods used for valuation, and proposes to introduce a valuation cycle of 5 years, with provision that the county assemblies can extend the period for a maximum of 2 years. The bill further provides guidance on the preparation and contents of valuation roles and supplementary valuation roles, together with alterations, publication, and objections thereof, and exceptions provided. Honorable Speaker, it's important that whatever valuation roles we come up with in our counties, every 5 years we're able to review them, and the county assemblies can extend those valuation roles or whatever they are using for the rateable areas for a maximum of 2 years, so that again all our county governments appraise themselves with the current developments. And you see, Honorable Speaker, in many of our rural areas, with a massive investment put in the development of infrastructure, whether it is rail or road infrastructure, Honorable Speaker, you find areas that in about 5 years ago were not accessible by road or by rail, today or in another 5 years are accessible. And therefore, the value of land keeps fluctuating and changes. There are other happenings that could also devalue land, although very rare, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, if you go for a long time without being able to review, then county governments will lose the opportunity to be able to collect rates from their areas. Therefore, we want to ensure that every 5 years, our county governments are able to review the rateable properties and the rates that they are charging, and the areas where the rateable areas and the methods that they use for valuation, so that they keep appraising their sources of revenue, Honorable Speaker, to be able to generate more revenue. And I was saying, Honorable Speaker, in the earlier debate on the VAT on market digital place, we did commit as a Kenya Kwanza government, right from the campaign to when His Excellency the President took over as the leader of this nation last year, that this government will be deliberate and intentional in ensuring that we create new avenues of raising revenue or revenue-raising measures, not just what we did in the digital marketplace, VAT and other taxes, but even in this Rateable Ratings Act, we are seeking to create new avenues for our county governments across the country, even Marsabit County, where my sister, Honorable Naomi Wako, comes from. And I know she is working very hard, hopefully, to be the next governor for that county. Should that happen, Honorable Speaker, we want to ensure that her and other members of parliament here who intend to run for governor positions have very good sources of revenue. For instance, Nandi County, where the Honorable Meli comes from, is one area, and I mentioned the Honorable Meli deliberately because I also know he intends to run for governor. But he must be here to ensure that his own county in Nandi, the tea estates there, the levying of property taxes is fair, and is able to collect adequate rates on land in Nandi County to ensure that when he becomes governor, or Naomi Wako is governor for Marsabit, or someone else is governor for Busia, you have sources of revenue that you will not become another crybaby to be asking for money from the center. Because all our governors have huge opportunities. And I must take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to thank governors. Like the governor for Kirinyaga. I think I also saw the governor for Tharaka Nithi, governor for Murang'a, governors who have embarked on shoring up their own source revenues within a very short time. And we must encourage these governors, Honorable Speaker, so that even those of us who sit here and you have intent of being governors, don't just look for positions of governors to go and start crying out loud, oh, how much money have we not received from the central government? By the time you are getting money from the center, you should have generated adequate revenues to pay your workers so that the money you get from the center goes to development. But it cannot be, and it's not feasible, Honorable Speaker, that 90% of our governors are crying for money from the center to pay salaries. It is not feasible, Honorable Speaker. But we must also, and we have an obligation as members of parliament and as lawmakers, to make laws that will ensure that our governors have systems where they can collect, whether it is these rates from property, whether it is levies for the massive infrastructural development that we have seen across many of our counties in water and sanitation. Honorable Speaker, many of our people assume that sewer, because it's sewerage and it's filth, is free. Yes, it is free when you are pumping it out of your body and flushing it out of your toilet. But when it gets into a county government-funded or a government-funded sewer system, you as a person who has dispensed that sewer should be paying to the county government. And the county governments must ensure they have even metered ways of being able to collect revenue from sewer, so that the more you use and the more you dispense into the sewer system to go to Embakasi, Ruai, and wherever, Honorable Speaker, you pay. Because you pay to eat. So pay to also dispense what you eat, Honorable Speaker, and where it ends up, you must pay. I say this, Honorable Speaker, because I have seen a lot of communities protesting. They cheer when government is creating sewer and water systems in their villages and their backyards, but they don't want to pay for those systems. And they forget those sewerage systems are being done for your own health. And Dr. Nyikal will tell you here, being a very good doctor, former director of health in the Ministry of Health. Do estates, these gated communities we are doing, as I was indicating, Honorable Speaker, drill a borehole, have 20, 30 septic tanks. The water that percolates into the aquifers, that water is going when it is already polluted. And it is the same water that we then pump out from boreholes without treating. Because we say, oh, it's borehole water, it's clean water. Part of it is very dangerous water and dangerous for our health, Honorable Speaker. But land developers and property developers will never let you do this. But as government, as legislators, you have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that the water our people drink is secure and is safe. And therefore, we also have a duty to ensure that we secure the sources of revenue that our county governments will be able to generate revenue out of, so that they're able to provide the sewer systems, the clean water and safe drinking water, Honorable Speaker, provide secure environments by giving our estates and our neighborhoods street lighting, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, as I move, let me encourage all of us to support this bill and to think through all our neighborhoods. Those who come from our cities, have in mind the housing agenda and the new owners of property. How will someone who owns a studio on the 40th floor of a building in Ziwani pay for rates to the county government because he's enjoying to the 40th floor? He will expect to have clean drinking water and clean water to flush their toilets and use their showers. Therefore, they must be paying something to their county government for their county government of Nairobi to be able to provide that clean water and sewer services in that city. Those of us who come from rural and peri-urban constituencies, let us also have in mind the issues I'm speaking to, and I hope the chair who will be seconding this chair in charge of the Lands Committee will put in mind the issues I've spoken to on land that is being used for agriculture, so that we also secure and encourage land used for agriculture. Because when it becomes fashionable and more profitable to only build brick and mortar, then all our agricultural land will end up with brick and mortar, and eventually will become a net importer of food. Honorable Speaker, I had the opportunity this Sunday to visit a farm in Taita Taveta County, and I was impressed with the potential of agriculture even in what are otherwise very dry areas of our country, semi-arid and arid areas. The potential, the soils are fertile, and all they lack is water. And with provision of water, we can turn around and make our country food secure. But even as we do that, we must bear in mind 10 to 50 years to come, what will happen to our country if we discourage our farmers, if we even discourage our young people from getting into agriculture through taxes that we are levying either on farm implements. And I must thank the Finance Committee because they were deliberate during the Finance Bill. As I keep repeating, Honorable Speaker, the Finance Act is vilified without people paying regard to the very good propositions that lay in that Finance Act, where farm implements, farm inputs were zero-rated, some taxes were removed from them, so that we even encourage people to get into farming, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, that's what I'm saying, even as we consider this bill, I hope during the third reading, the Committee on Lands will ensure that we also safeguard that aspect of agricultural land so that, again, our counties do not levy property rates on agricultural land or land set aside for use for agriculture, Honorable Speaker. And as I said, I have that good experience in Kiambu County, because there is no distinction between land that is agricultural and land that is for other developments. And therefore, you find farmers now are opting to subdivide their land and build houses, because that is the only way they will be able to pay the rates, the rates that are being levied by their county governments. Therefore, we must have a distinction so that a farmer who is growing vegetables in Kikuyu or a farmer who is growing avocados in Muranga does not get encouraged to get into housing and subdivide his land into 30 by 70s to be able to generate more money, to be able to pay the rates to their county government, but they can grow their avocados, they can grow their vegetables, and be able to pay affordable rates to their county governments. And I would even propose that land set aside for agriculture, the property rates be almost zero or negligible. It should be 0.0000005%. So that there is something, but there is nothing. So that food, you know, I've seen people, the other day they were in the streets telling us, we do not want houses, we want food. The place to come and say you want food is here with this bill. And make it happen. The place to make sure that we have policies, that we encourage farmers to grow crops even within our urban areas. I was saying now Kajiado, if you go to Kitengela, you go to Isinya, all the way almost to Bisil, all that land now is going up in brick and mortar. But it's fertile land, virgin land, where nobody has ever farmed. If anything, it's only animals that have done their business on that land and provided compost organic manure that makes the land very fertile. Therefore, we must encourage our young people in Kajiado, in Kiambu, and in every part of this country to get into agriculture so that we say we are food secure, so that tomorrow, and I must appreciate that now food prices are going down. Honorable Speaker, you know, when the President said that the other day that you do not, food doesn't come from the market, it comes from the farms. People thought it was a joke. And we told them that food prices in this country will come down. I am glad. I have seen even the hateful media, those who can never write anything good about this administration, at least today they are publishing news saying that eventually food prices are coming down, which is a good thing, because we did the right thing by subsidizing inputs for agriculture, encouraging people to go back to the farms. And I must thank even those of our colleagues from the minority who have seen the wisdom of getting out of the streets and joining other Kenyans in the farms, members of parliament joining us back in the House to legislate and give rise to policies that will make food more affordable to the people of Kenya. This is the way that we must encourage each other to work, and I welcome the Honorable Mwenje, the Honorable Zamzam, the Honorable Member for Starehe back to the House after the short stint in the streets, and I'm sure they will now have time to settle down and now learn how to be good legislators by coming to propagate issues that touch on the people of Nyamakima here in the House, Honorable Mwenje, those that touch on the people where sewer flows to through Embakasi West, so that now you must tell the people they must pay for the sewer. And you pay depending on how much you dispense into the sewer system. With those very many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask the very able chair for Lands Committee, Honorable Nyamoko, to second this bill. Honorable Nyamoko has done a good job, and let me thank the committee, Honorable Speaker, in closing, because they did put in a lot of work in considering this bill and tabled a report in record time. And I thank Honorable Nyamoko and all members of the Lands Committee. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I ask the Honorable Nyamoko to second.
Thank you, Honorable Majority Leader. But before Honorable Joash seconds, allow me to interrupt and recognize some of the schools, considering that there's a very high traffic levels in the galleries and we have some that are traveling far. Some have even left the galleries. I will recognize the following school: Kigumo Girls in absentia from Kigumo constituency in Murang'a County. They were in the public gallery. I'm told they have left. And the member of parliament, Honorable Munyoro, has actually welcomed them to the house. I recognize Babadogo Primary School from Ruaraka constituency, Nairobi County. I recognize Utini Girls, Kibwezi West, Makueni County. I recognize Kanyuabora Boys, Mbere North constituency, Embu County. I recognize from the Speaker's Gallery, St. Bakita Siakago Girls, Mbere North, Embu County, St. Catherine Gaturi Girls, Mbere North, Embu County. And on behalf of the House, I welcome you to observe the proceedings of this House. I then give this chance to Honorable Joash Nyamoko to second the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity for me to second this motion. I rise to second. But before I do so, I want also to take this opportunity to thank the Leader Majority for eloquently moving this particular bill, and also for breaking down the elements of the bill, which has made and simplified the actual proposal, the legislative proposal, that we had an opportunity as a Committee of Lands to walk through. Madam Speaker, I want to say from the onset that when we interacted with this particular legislative proposal, we came and we are convicted that this is a very progressive proposal, and I'm very sure that it will have a profound impact on the revenue collection measures which have been put up by the Kenya Kwanza government. That's if it's passed. And I'm very sure also that the county governments across the country will be able to raise money beyond what they're collecting at the moment. Madam Speaker, the National Ratings Bill seeks to provide for a very comprehensive legal framework in how they are going to levy properties and land in the country. It also provides a mechanism on how valuation of rateable properties will be undertaken, and also there's an element of the appointment of all valuers, the setting up of the criteria for the appointments of valuers, and also it will provide for the establishment and determination of powers and functions of a national rating valuation tribunal. This is something that we've not had, and even when we interacted with the Council of Governors, they had a proposal that it could have been better for them to have these tribunals set up in the 47 county governments, but we didn't find it tenable. The bill seeks to give effect to Article number 190, as eloquently articulated by the Honorable Leader Majority. That's Article number 2, and also Article 209 of the Constitution, by providing a uniform legislative framework and a mechanism on how the county governments are going to undertake those functions which have already been highlighted. Madam Speaker, currently, levying of property rates in Kenya relies on valuation of Rating Act Cap 266 and Rating Act Cap 267. These acts, which were enacted in 1956 and 1964 respectively, are outdated and lack a clear legal framework to guide the county governments in achieving optimal property rates collection, as they are not aligned to the Constitution, which, Madam Speaker, we passed in 2010, and the devolved system of the government. By the application of these outdated legislations, it implies that the county governments are not able to realize their full potential because they are basing their collections or the rates on these laws which were passed in the 60s. And that's why it has become very important and prudent for us to relook at this particular space. Madam Speaker, in 2018, the National Treasury, with the assistance of the World Bank, commissioned a study by Adam Smith International on own source of revenue potential and tax gap study, of which the Kenya county governments, in the county governments, among the key objectives of the study was to map out counties' local revenue potential base. The study established substantially and realized county revenue potential ranging between 55 billion and 173 billion as compared to what is being collected today, which is that 5 billion that counties are collecting. So if you look at this 35 billion, it doesn't even fall between the brackets of the potential that we have, which is between 55 and 173. Madam Speaker, as when they were doing this study, they were also able to determine that most of the revenues which are collected by the county governments, this particular one, which is revenue collected from the properties and land rates, it's not as attractive as what is usually collected from the parking fees, what is collected from health facilities. And when you look at this potential from the study and the conclusion which was undertaken by this study, it means that if we are able to do the actual implementation of bypassing this, we will be able to facilitate the county governments across the country and even the national government to collect more and more for the development of the country. Madam Speaker, the bill therefore seeks to repeal Valuation of Rating Act, Cap 266, and the Rating Act, Cap 267, which I've indicated were done in the 60s, by providing for a uniform legislative framework to regulate national government and county governments in imposing rates and valuing of properties as contemplated in the Constitution. The bill seeks to provide for enhancement, certainty, uniformity, and fairness in levying of property rates by the county governments. In other words, what we are going to have at the end of the day is just a single legislation which will regulate all the county governments and the national government. Unlike the case today where you have various county governments have come up with their own rating laws, which in most cases are at variance and are not very uniform. Madam Speaker, if you could allow me, then I'll go to the clause-by-clause analysis so that the House can have a detailed understanding on how this bill has been organized. So as I indicated, the main objective is to have the guiding principles on the application of the Act and use of technology. Clause 3 of the bill provides the objects and purpose of the bill, which number one is give effect of Article 191 and Article 2093A of the Constitution by providing for a uniform legislative framework, and number two, a mechanism on how the county governments shall undertake valuations for the rating and imposition of rates on rateable properties. These will also provide an enhanced use of appropriate technology in undertaking the valuation for the rating and rating-related purposes, and also provide for the roles of the chief government valuer in respect of collation of all valuation rolls prepared and deposited by the county governments. What we mean, Madam Speaker, by this is that all the county governments will be expected to undertake or develop valuation rolls which will be deposited to the chief government valuer who will be stationed at the national office. So in other words, we'll have one chief government valuer, but the respective valuers from various or from the 47 count governments will develop their own valuation roles, which will then be deposited to the government, chief government valuer. Clause 4 of the bill, for the guiding principle of the bill, the clause provides that each count government shall, in implementing the provisions of the bill, number 1, adhere to the national values and principles of governance as set out under Article 10 of the Constitution, ensure conformity to the values and principles of the public service as set out under Article 232 of the Constitution, and conform to the principles of public finance as set out under Article 210 of the Constitution. In Clause 5 of the bill regulates the application of the bill and provides that the Act shall to all rateable property within respective count governments. Clause 6 of the bill, that is the use of technology, and provides that each count government shall establish or employ appropriate technological systems in the preparation and the implementation of the valuation role on the supplementary valuation roles. Honorable Speaker, Part 2 of the bill, and that's clause number 7 to 20, contains a detailed provision regulating rating, including duty to levy rates, forms of rating, notices of rating, publication of rating area, annual rent of value rating, the notice of rates, payment of rates, remission of rates, discounts and waivers, enforcement of payment of rates, and contribution in lieu of rates. Part 3 of the bill, proposed bill, clause 21 to 25 contains a detailed provision regulating the appointment of powers, the appointment and the powers of valuers, including the criteria to be a valuer. That's for you to be appointed, the qualifications one is supposed to have, responsibilities of the valuers, powers of the valuers, and responsibilities of the chief government valuer. Madam Speaker, Part 4, that's clause 26 to 36, contains a detailed provision regulating the valuation for rating, including general basis of valuation, declaration of rateable rate areas, methods of valuation, preparation of valuation roles, and supplementary valuation roles. Contents of draft valuation roles and draft supplemental valuation roles. Alterations of the valuation roles and supplemental valuation roles. Deposit of draft valuation roles and draft supplemental valuation roles. Publication of the roles, objections, and contested draft valuation roles and draft supplemental valuations roles and exemptions. Honorable Speaker, Part 5, that's clause number 37 to 53, contains a detailed provision regulating National Rating Tribunal, which contains a detailed provision for regulating establishment of National Tribunal, composition of the tribunal, jurisdiction of the tribunal, proceedings of the tribunal, oath of office, quorum, disclosure of interest, tenure, technical advice, arrangements of business, powers of the tribunal, remunerations, members of the tribunal, staff of the tribunal, vacancies of the tribunal, evidence and penalty for failure to comply with the tribunal's lawful order and appeals. Clause 37 of the bill establishes the National Rating Bill. Madam Speaker, Part 6, that's clause 3756, contains a detailed provision regulating miscellaneous, including notices and appeals. Part 7, clause 54 to 55, contains a detailed provision on delegated legislation. That's clause 56, 57, including regulations and savings and transitions. The first schedule contains a detailed provision regulating application for remission of the whole or part of the rateable payable to the owner of the rateable property. First schedule contains a detailed provision regulating contributions in lieu of the rates forms. The third schedule contains the rates objections form. The third schedule contains the oath or solemn affirmation of the allegiance of the chairperson and members of the tribunal. Madam Speaker, the said bill was first read on Wednesday, 8th March 2023, and it was subjected to public participation in accordance to Article 118 of the Constitution and Standing Order number 127 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, having been placed in an advert in the print media on Thursday, 16th March 2023, inviting public submission, memoranda, and the bill. By close of business on Tuesday, 21st March 2023, the committee had received submissions from the National Land Commission, the State Department of Lands and Fiscal Planning, and the National Treasury and the Council of Governors, all of which are contained in the report which we presented. The committee sat and did analysis of the views which were presented by those various agencies that I've mentioned, Madam Speaker. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the members of the committee, that's the Committee on Lands, for their input and for the engagement they had during the processing of this particular bill. And having considered and taken into account the views and the recommendations of the public, including the relevant stakeholders, the committee recommended that this bill be considered during the third reading. Madam Speaker, with that, I second.
Other members, I therefore propose that the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022, be read a second time. Honorable members, before I give the members to contribute, allow me to recognize yet more students in our galleries today. In the public gallery, ACK St. Paul Mehote, Mathioya constituency, Murang'a County, and in the Speaker's Gallery, St. Francis Girls Mangu, Gatundu North constituency, Kiambu County. On behalf of the House, I welcome you to observe these proceedings of the House. This chance will go to the member, Honorable Jackson Kosgei.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the onset, I wish to state that I support the motion. Clarity of law governing land as a principal factor of revenue collection in any country, generation in any country, is of great importance and cannot be overemphasized. It has been said that the rule of law in the ecosystem of investments is a vital source of progress and sustainability in development. So it is very important to relook at and continue to progressively assess how the laws governing our urban centers in relationship in its growth and also in the development and our economy. One, it creates an environment within which our people can enhance their creativity, can flourish, and can increase their prosperity in building the economy in the nation. Madam Speaker, the law plays a very important role, and especially this time as we continue to implement and enjoy the fruits of devolution in this country. Some urban centers which falls on the boundary requires some clarity of management because it has become a source of conflict between communities that operates in markets and also authorities that are concerned. Sometimes you'd never know whether it falls on this county or the other one, but I think as we look at this, it is going to sort out some of the ambiguities governing the same. By improving our relook on our laws pertaining on revenue collection also in this area, we are also helping to foster development by strengthening the voices of the people and individuals and communities when they are requiring to access justice. So the easier it is for them, and the easier it is made for them, it creates some confidence when their rights are violated. Madam Speaker, I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Vice Chair of Lands Committee, Member for Naivasha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Being a member of the Lands Committee, I think I support the bill because I'm definitely part of it. And all that needs to be said has been said by the Majority Leader and my chair, because this bill seeks to harmonize the erratic way rating of properties have been done. If you see, the last enactment of 1956, and then the next one in 1964, it is way before we enacted the 2010 Constitution. So this bill seeks to tighten the loose ends and also facilitate county government to get the revenue that they need in conformity with the new constitution. And with technology in place, Madam Speaker, that tells us that even those counties that have been complaining of not getting their funds or taxes that they need to collect, this thing will tie, the bill will tie all those ends, and they'll have a way, other than the erratic way things have been done, they have a way of collecting their revenue. So I'm part of this bill because I am in that committee. So we have talked to all the stakeholders, and it is only in order that I support and I ask the House to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Wilberforce Oundo, Member for Funyula.
For 30 minutes. Honorable Speaker, the Leader of Majority.
Just to be clear, Honorable Member, you have 10 minutes, maximum of 10 minutes.
Honorable Speaker, because the Majority Leader recognizing my expertise and over 30 years.
What's your point of order, Leader of Majority?
Honorable Speaker, I am aware that the Honorable Udo has 10 minutes, but I was only signaling the Speaker that the Honorable Udo is an authority on valuation, is a land economist. Therefore, if you would be kind enough to add him 5 or 10 minutes, we will benefit immensely to enrich this bill.
Leader of Majority, the Speaker is signaled, but we made these rules, and I know Honorable Oundo will be, being an economist, will be economical with his words to fit in 10 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I must declare that I'm a registered valuer, having practiced for over 30 years. I have been a lecturer of both valuation and land taxation, and obviously I'm happy that finally what we set out when we started the land reforms, the process of land reform sometimes 1990s, to consolidate and harmonize various land laws or land administration laws is now coming to fruition. Honorable Speaker, what we are talking about here today is in the realm of land administration that talks about issue of titling, registration, taxation, and the rest. And I'm happy, Honorable Speaker, we are putting into effect Article 209(3) of the Constitution that allows county governments to levy taxes, and one of the taxes allowed to levy is land rates, entertainment, and its licenses for trading and businesses. Honorable Speaker, the bill essentially tries or attempts or has collapsed two different bills or two different acts we have used for practice, as they have clearly said, since early 1950s or late 1950s and independence. That is the Rating Act and Evaluation for Rating Act. And Honorable Speaker, so essentially they have combined the two and tried all they could to expand and enrich to fit the requirement of the Constitution of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, in the issue of land administration, the central point here, and I think the majority leader tried to allude to it, is the issue of land information management system. Honorable Speaker, under the committee of the whole House, the issue of integrating land management information system at the National Land Registry and the county level in respect of the evaluation role has to be central to this particular bill. And I hope the Committee of Lands has had technical advice and technical input to make sure that we incorporate the same. Without the integrated land information management system, Honorable Speaker, this bill, when it becomes an act, will just be like the other that we have had before. Honorable Speaker, in the realm of land taxation, there are a few issues that we must put in place. Number one, what is it that we are taxing? When you have land, and that's why progressive legislation have gotten away from the reference to land and are now talking about property taxation, to expand the definition of property as in law as compared to the limited definition of land. So here the question is, what are we taxing? Are we taxing income from the ownership of the property? Or are we taxing the brick and the mortar? Or are we taxing the physical attribute of the land? I see in the bill there has been an attempt to make it loose-ended, that at any given time, the any rating authority in this event, the county government, can choose any mode to use to tax. But essentially, when you look at the Constitution, the public finance section seems to say that there must be uniformity in taxation, so that there must be some predictability, so that if I'm in Mombasa, I'm an investor in Mombasa, I want to own a property, and I have another investor in Seaport, I own a property, there must be certainty on the amount of taxes I'm going to pay. And therefore, as we move forward, we must, as a country, make that conscious and deliberate decision that what form of rating do we adopt? Do we adopt an improved site value? Do we adopt improved property value? Or do we go for area rating? Honorable Speaker, that's the first part, which a debate must be exhausted. And that's why the link of integrated land information management system becomes critical, because then it will tell us what is the kind of land, what kind of the use of the property do we have at that particular moment. Secondly, and most important, equally important, is the issue of identification of the property. When you look at the Land Registration Act of 2012, talks about the boundaries must be delineated and identified using geographical positioning system. Unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, and I would seek that answer from the Minister for CS for Lands in due course, the number of titles that have been placed under GPS or geographical positioning system are very, very few. So again, without having the proper infrastructure in place, this bill that we are proposing to have uniform application throughout the country is going to be tedious and might not work. What has been happening since the proclamation of the new constitution is that county governments have been domesticating the Rating Act and the Evaluation for Rating Act for purposes of undertaking or preparing an evaluation role in order to collect revenue. Honorable Speaker, the third most important thing is the identification of the rateable owner. Who is the rateable owner? And this brings into question, who draws the benefits? When is an owner, is a leaseholder for 10 years, can he be considered an owner or not? So that's a debate we must go through over time. Because that has been the lacuna in law. You find that quite a number of properties have been rates have been charged on the wrong party, yet the person who drives benefits, actual benefits, is another person. So again, Honorable Speaker, we must have that debate as we go ahead, as we enrich this bill. Honorable Speaker, of course, the most controversial and contentious issue has been the rate to be applied, the rate struck to be applied. Honorable Speaker, all over the world, and if you look at the history of land taxation, started during the feudal system in the UK, where they say the owners of the land, as they derive benefits from public service, they must pay back for the maintenance and expansion of those services. All over the world, taxation has always been an emotive issue, has been a political issue, and if anybody ever doubted the politics of taxation, must have seen with the just forcibly enacted Finance Act. So obviously, as part of the amendments, we'll make enrichment that are before the county executive committee member responsible says the rate struck, there must be adequate public participation. And there must be public participation that makes meaning. Unlike what you have heard in the past, where members of public state and make submissions, submit petitions, memorandum, which are routinely and carelessly, casually ignored, and with certain legislation is rammed through, which has got very serious consequences. So one of the issues that we are now seeing in academia, that in the setting of the rate struck, there must be some kind of compelling public participation that whatever is said becomes compulsory. In many countries, Honorable Speaker, to impose even a tax, you have to go to referendum for the members to agree whether we go for referendum or not. Honorable Speaker, again, in any particular area, I have seen in this bill, they say the county government is a rating authority. And they say all the properties in the county government will be subject to a rating.
Honorable Undo, yes, given your expertise and the fact that you hired the leader of majority to be your lawyer, I will exercise my discretion and add you 5 minutes. I see your time is running out.
For the first time, the leader has been sympathetic to the majority of Kenyans. So, Honorable Speaker, the debate that we must have here is that the bill proposes that the rating authority will be the county government. And they say it suggests that all the properties in the county government within the jurisdiction of the county will be subject to rating. And Honorable Speaker, this has been an age-long debate all over the world, that if you impose a tax rate, a uniform tax rate, or a segregated tax rate, yet the income, the benefits being derived from ownership of a property is not uniform, you end up disadvantaging and punishing those who have got marginal use of their property. For example, Honorable Speaker, a peasant farmer in the area Muranga or in the area Kiambu here, who has got very little he extracts from that piece of land, ask him to pay rates at the same rate like somebody from this side of Kabete, where they collect gold in form of coffee, is emotionally unfair and politically disadvantageous. The thinking has been Under the Constitution, county governments are allowed to declare an area an urban area under the Urban Areas and Cities Act. So that's the kind of discussion we must have, that should we punish peasant farmers wherever they are. Of course, there have been arguments here in Nairobi that what happens, somebody comes and puts up a a residential block and lives there. Should the rest be the same? But the other part of the debate, Honorable Speaker, is that what happens for owner-occupied, a retiree who occupies his house, has no income, the only income he has is pension. How would you force him to pay rent at a certain level beyond even the rent you could have derived from that particular area? So, Honorable Speaker, it's a debate that we must continue and we must continue to have. The Act, Honorable Speaker, introduces a curious position, two curious positions that are either in law or in the Constitution. That one of the chief government valuer. That's an administrative position in the Ministry of Lands. And again, without constitutional or statutory powers, the chief government valuer might not be able to instruct the county governments to do anything. In any case, Honorable Speaker, it will now be important for us to look at it, as well as look at the Land Act, the Land Registration Act, so that we anchor the position of the chief government valuer in both the acts so that it can have effect on this matter. Honorable Speaker, the other debate is the issue of who is a government valuer, a private valuer. Honorable Speaker, a valuer is a valuer. There's no private valuer, there's no public valuer, there's no government valuer. Just like a lawyer, a teacher is a teacher. Whether they teach in private schools or they teach in public schools, is a teacher. Honorable Speaker, we remember we have the Sectional Properties Act, number 20 of 2020, that has brought a new appreciation that there can be a title in the air. During our times, we used to ask, whose roof is it? That you live in a block of flats, whose roof is it? When a leakage starts on the top of the house, of the block of flat, and affects the ground floor, whose roof is it? So again, the bill must align itself to the Sectional Properties Act, number 20 of 2020, so that we are able to maximize revenue as a result of property taxation. Honorable Speaker, I appreciate the extra time given, and because it takes almost 9 hours to train somebody on land taxation. It takes about 306 hours to train undergraduate on valuation. I cannot cover all the principles at this particular level. But suffice to say that the cardinal principle of taxation is equity. Is it fair? Second cardinal of taxation is the issue of the cost of administration. I am afraid saying that we will be preparing a new valuation roll after 5 years is going to be extremely expensive and cumbersome. Honorable Speaker, from my personal experience, whatever technology you use, you cannot prepare a valuation roll for even a middle-sized town in less than 1 year. Because getting documentation to prove ownership is a problem. The registry index maps are not regularly updated, so you have to go through the process of updating the same. Getting the GPS coordinates and getting all those things, it takes a long, long period of time. In the past, we have been having a 10-year period. But in the event there is an rise in the property values, nothing stops the county government from preparing a supplementary valuation roll specifically for that area that they think has improved. For example, as the majority leader has been saying, he has got a piece of land behind Lenana High School. When the bypass went through, the value naturally shot up. So in that event, you can even do a linear valuation roll to accommodate the changes in the values. Because I foresee a situation whereby it will be extremely expensive and cumbersome Because again, remember, the process of objection, the process of the National Rating Tribunal, you have to go to court, the environment and the land court is going to be extremely cumbersome. We would ask the committee and we'd ask the drafters of the bill to consider a longer period of time so that there is value for the money spent preparing this particular evaluation role. Honorable Speaker, again, as I conclude, there are a few issues, of course, that needs to be clearly understood, and therefore, at the committee of the whole House, I will spare enough time, prepare adequate amendments, and we hope we'll have a bipartisan approach to those amendments so that it does not become that the debacle that was the finance bill on the floor of this House. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the time, extended time, and I can now see friendships don't die even when positions change. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Asante mbunge wa Funyula. Nafasi hii nitampa mbunge wa Mombasa, Mheshimiwa Zamzam.
Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kuchukua fursa hii kuweza kuunga mjadala huu wa leo na bili ambayo imeletwa na ndugu yetu ambayo ni mwakilishi wa wengi ndani ya bunge hili. Mara ya kwanza nitakuwa mbunifu na kuweza kusema na mpiga support kubwa sana katika bili hii, kwa sababu ni bili ambayo kwa kweli imeweza kushika watu wengi sana. Na mimi nataka kusema hivi. Kwanza alisahau kutaja gavana wangu wa Mombasa. Gavana wetu Abdulswamad Sharif Nasir ndio amekuwa katika wale bora zaidi, ndio aliongoza katika wale ambao wamekusanya ushuru, ambaye aliongoza kuwa number 1. Kwa hiyo nampongeza kwanza gavana wangu Abdulswamad. Jambo lingine nataka kusema kuwa imekuwa dhahiri shairi kuwa wale ambao wamekuwa na mashamba na wamejenga nyumba zao ndani ya mashamba haya, wengine wamekuwa hawana chochote na wamekuwa wakitoa ushuru sawia na wale ambao pengine wamejenga nyumba, wameweka wapangaji ndani yake na wanakusanya mapeni. Kwa hiyo hii bili ya leo mimi nimeifurahia sana, kwa sababu yule mnyonge ambaye hana kitu na yeye pia aweze kupewa mwanya wa kuweza kutafuta wakati ule ambapo atakuwa yuko sawa, aweza pia yeye kufanya maendeleo na akalipa ushuru sawia na wenzake. Na pia mwenzangu amezungumzia na mimi niweze kulipigia pono. Kuna watu ambao walikuwa wameajiriwa, lakini sasa miaka imepita, pengine wameingia retire na waliamua katika mashamba yao ambao yako mjini waweze kujenga tu majumba yao. Hawana mpangaji, hawana yoyote yule wa kuwasaidia, isipokuwa pale ni makao ambao wamekaa wao. Kwa hiyo pia ningependa kusema watu kama hawa wasiwekwe sawia na watu ambao wanalipa ushuru mkubwa ule wa kukusanya katika rent. Na hata ikiwezekana mimi ningeomba watu kama hawa ambao hawana chochote wasiweze kulipa kabisa mpaka wakati ambapo wataanza kudevelop ile mashamba yao ndio wanaweza kulipa ushuru. Jambo nyingine ambao ningependa kuupongeza bili hii, kuna wale ambao wametoka mataifa ya nje, wamekuja wamechukua mashamba hapa Kenya, wamejenga, pengine wameinvest, wameweka biashara zao. Huwezi kulinganisha biashara zao pamoja na yule Mkenya ambao biashara yake iko duni. Kwa hiyo ushuru ambao unakusanywa isiwe sawia na yule ambao ni Mkenya halisi, iwe huyu wa Kenya aweze kutoa ushuru mdogo, huyu ambaye amekuja kufanya biashara hapa Kenya aweze kutoa ushuru wa juu kidogo. Kwa sababu hata sisi pia tukienda katika mataifa yao hatusazwi kule, tunatolewa ushuru kama yule mtu ambaye ametoka taifa lingine kuja kuinvest katika mataifa yao. Kwa hiyo na Kenya pia tuige mfano huo, tuweze na sisi kuwatoza hawa ushuru zaidi. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi nimekuwa Ethiopia, na kitu ambacho nilikipata kule nimetamani iwe katika taifa letu. Ethiopia walivyofanya ni kuwa mashamba yao hawauzii watu wa nje, watu wakuja, tunasema watu ambao wametoka nje ya taifa, hawauzii. Shamba linabaki, pengine kama ni Kenya linabaki ni la wa Kenya tu. Kwa sababu utapata watu ambao wametoka mataifa mengine, wamekuja wamechukua mashamba yetu, huyu Mkenya anabaki kuwa hana chochote. Kwa hiyo sheria imewapa wale kuchukua shamba kwa kuwekeza tu kwa muda fulani. Baada ya muda fulani wanaachia watu wao mashamba yao. Lakini sasa hapa Kenya iko tofauti. Mtu amenunua shamba na enjoy, pengine alipata yule Mkenya ambao ni halisi alikuwa na matatizo kidogo, hajui ile value ya shamba yake, akaweza kuitoa kwa bei ya chini, amebaki anahangaika na watoto, amekuwa maskini. Ni sheria ambayo ningependa ije hapa Kenya, lakini ni ya siku nyingine ambayo tuweza kuijadili hapa bungeni. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ningependa kusema kuwa kuna pia sintofahamu katika wale ambao wamechukua haya mashamba ndani ya mji. Pengine walipewa allotment notice ambao wamechukua mashamba, lakini kuweza kupewa zile title deed pia imekuwa kizungumkuti. Ni jambo ambalo ningependa pia Mheshimiwa Majority Leader aweze kuligusia, ili mtu akipewa allotment amenunua shamba pengine kwa county government, iwe itafuatana kabisa na ile title deed. Isiwe kuwa mtu anaanza kuzungushwa huku na huku wakati ambapo analipa ushuru. Na mimi ningependa kusema kuwa pia hata county government waangalie. Kuna mtu amekaa miaka mingi sana kwenye shamba, amelipa ushuru, amerenew pengine, amelipa tena. Tuangalie pia watu hawa, tuangalie kwa jicho la upole, ili hata kama wanalipa ushuru nao wawe na furaha wa kuweza kulipa ushuru. Mheshimiwa Spika, masala ya ushuru yamekuwa donda sugu na utata katika taifa hili. Na pengine mimi ningependa kumkosoa kidogo Majority Leader, alituambia sisi tulikuwa barabarani. Mimi nataka kumuelewesha kuwa hatukuwa barabarani kwa kupenda, hapana. Ni vile hali ya maisha ilivyo ngumu, hali ya maisha ilivyo tata. Kwa hiyo kwenda kwetu sisi kule, hata yeye kesho na ana nafasi ya kuingia pia kule barabarani akaweza kujieleza na akaweza kusikizwa. Lakini katika hili la mashamba mimi nampongeza sana, na mimi nataka kusema kuwa hii italeta uchumi bora katika taifa yetu. Na wale ambao wana mashamba na pengine wana majumba wamepangisha watu, na waombeni musiwe mnachelewesha ule ushuru, kwa sababu huu ushuru ndio unatumiwa kujenga taifa. Huu ushuru kikawia sana, mambo yanaenda sio sawa, na unapata Mkenya ule wa chini kabisa anahangaika. Tujibidishe sana kwenye kulipa ushuru, na tuangalie kuwa huu ushuru pia ukitolewa, hizi pesa zikikusanywa ziende kwa mifuko ambayo italeta tajriba katika jamii, iende kwenye mifuko ambao utaleta maendeleo katika jamii, iende kwa mfuko wa kuonyesha kuwa ushuru wa Kenya wametoa lakini kuna maendeleo yanaonekana. Wale ambao ni wanyonge katika jamii pia nao waangaliwe pia katika mfuko wao waweza wakaangaliwa vipi. Hii yote inatokana na kulipa ushuru kwa wakati. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nimesimama kusupport mjadala huu wa leo, na mimi nataka niseme hivi. Pale Mombasa County kuna ndugu zetu ambao walikaa hapo miaka mingi sana na hawajapata hati miliki za mashamba yao. Lakini kuna watu ambao wanachukua ushuru wa shamba na hawako ndani ya Mombasa. Na hili mimi nimeitwa na wazee ambao ni wazee Council of Elders wa Mombasa, wakanilalamikia sana. Unapata mtu ni wa taifa kutoka Oman, lakini yeye ndo anakusanya ushuru kutoka ndani ya Mombasa County katika yale majumba. Mimi ningeomba pia kama county government ya Mombasa wangeweza kulifuatilia jambo hili, na mimi kama mama county wa Mombasa niweze pia kulileta katika jumba hili ili tuweze kujadili. Wale wanaolipa ushuru pale wamekaa miaka mingi hapo, lakini kuna mtu mahali anasema haya mashamba ni yangu, lakini huyu mtu si Mkenya, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo tuangalie pia kama tunakusanya ushuru, tunakusanya rates kutoka katika mashamba yetu, lakini tuhakikishe kuwa si rates zinakusanywa zinaenda kujenga mataifa mengine. Iwe ni hizi rates zinakusanywa zinajenga mataifa yetu sisi wenyewe, yajenga taifa letu sisi wenyewe. Na tuangalie kuwa wale ambao hawana hati miliki, wale ambao wamekaa katika mashamba haya miaka mingi na wamekaa wakilipa ushuru, ni wakati ambao kwamba pia na wao serikali iangalie waweze pia kupewa hizi title deeds. Mheshimiwa Spika, huu mjadala wa leo ni mjadala mpana sana. Niwapongeze wenzangu kwa kutilia pono kwa ujuzi ambao wamejitolelea leo kuzungumza na kusema kuwa hata kama wale wa kutoka nje watalipa na wao wasiwe sawa na Wakenya walipe juu kushinda Wakenya. Hiyo ndo sasa sheria ambayo sisi tunataka. Sio kuwa wale ambao ni Wakenya wananyanyaswa, mtu anafikiri sasa mimi nimepata pesa kidogo hapa, nitalipa ushuru ama nitanunua chakula. Kwa hiyo hawa ambao ni Wakenya na wamekaa miaka mingi katika haya mashamba, ushuru wao kidogo wapunguziwe, kwa sababu hali ya maisha iko tata sana. Na wale ambao wamekuja kuinvest, wana majumba, wamejenga magorofa, wanakusanya rates, wanakusanya rent katika mashamba haya, katika nyumba hizi, waweze kufanya nini? Kulipa ushuru kwa wakati. La mwisho nitapenda kusema wale wanaofanya ukulima, Mheshimiwa Spika, watolewe kabisa katika kulipa rates, ili tuweze kukuza chakula katika taifa hili, ili tuweze kupata chakula cha kutosha. Mheshimiwa Spika, taifa hili linategemea wakulima. Kwa hiyo tuwapunguzie gharama hata zaidi, ili tuweze kupata mavuno mengi na uchumi uende kupanda juu na ile tax iweze kurudi chini. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante Mheshimiwa Zamzam. Nafasi hii itamwendea Mheshimiwa wa Marakwet Magharibi, Mheshimiwa Timothy Toroitich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this very important legislation that has been proposed, that is the National Rating Bill. Madam Speaker, before joining this parliament, I worked in the County Assembly of Elgeyo Marakwet as a legal counsel. Madam Speaker, the biggest challenge that we have in this country is something called duplication of legislation, or, Madam Speaker, competing legislations. Madam Speaker, the quality of our legislation is determined by uniformity. Madam Speaker, if you realize, in this country, we devolve law-making powers to the county governments. So, Madam Speaker, what has happened is each county government is making a law to suit its own purpose. Madam Speaker, so that you find that in neighboring counties, each county has its own form of legislation. So, Madam Speaker, in terms of interpretation, if you buy a land that is adjacent to another county, when it's taken to court and there are different legislations governing a subject matter, it becomes challenging in the court addressing that particular situation. Madam Speaker, you also realize that the biggest challenge that bedevils county governments is the collection of revenue. Madam Speaker, the own source of revenue in the county governments has been a very big challenge, so that county governments rely heavily on the national government in terms of revenue. So, Madam Speaker, if we have such a uniform legislation in the country, then there will be an equal application of the law, so that we avoid county governments coming up with their own laws, which at some points, if it is subjected to the national law, then that law becomes incompetent. Madam Speaker, there is an interesting provision that I've seen in Clause 7.2 of that bill, which, Madam Speaker, says that county legislation shall be in compliance with this act. Madam Speaker, since we have several legislations in the county governments, and each county government applies the law in its own instance, then, Madam Speaker, we have a situation here where if there is a conflict between a county government law in terms of rating of property and the national law, then it is very clear under Clause 7.2a that the national law shall prevail. Madam Speaker, for me, that is a big achievement in this proposed legislation, so that there is a clear hierarchy of laws in terms of the rating of properties in this country. Madam Speaker, another plus that I've seen in this particular legislation is the creation of the National Rating Tribunal. Madam Speaker, for me, that is a big plus, because if you have a National Rating Tribunal, then it will assist this country in terms of solving matters to do with the issue of property rates. Madam Speaker, the problem that we have in this country is the backlog of cases in our courts. So if we have a tailor-made tribunal that is specifically meant to address matters to do with disputes in terms of property rates, then, Madam Speaker, Honorable Speaker, it will assist so much in terms of solving disputes in this country. Madam Speaker, sorry, I see Mr. Speaker is on the seat.
Never refer to the presiding speaker as Madam again. You know the presiding speaker is against everything that confuses gender.
Well,
I'm not an LGBTQ, I'm a biological male adult Kenyan person.
Honorable
Anyway,
Speaker,
proceed,
Honorable
okay.
Speaker, I am well guided on that area. So, Madam, Honorable Speaker, we now have a comprehensive legislation that will be able to handle matters to do with property rates in this country. Honorable Speaker, I was saying earlier that we have had haphazard legislations in this country when it comes to property rates. Honorable Speaker, each county has been enacting its own legislation. But Honorable Speaker, now we have a uniform legislation that will provide uniformity in matters to do with property rates and the rating of property in this country. So, Honorable Speaker, I fully endorse this particular legislation, in particular on matters to do with uniformity of laws in this country. Mr. Speaker, we have to relook clearly, because we devolved lawmaking to county governments. So what is happening at the county government is, one, you've said that disaster management is a county government function under the 4th schedule. What has happened? We have 48 different legislation on disaster management in this country. Land is devolved. But we have also allowed county governments to create legislations on rating of property. So we have 48 different legislations in this country in respect to rating. So what happens? When there is a conflict in a court of law in respect to, for example, the rating act of a certain county X, then it becomes very hard for the court to make a determination. But, Honorable Speaker, as I said earlier, there is a very clear provision under Clause 7.2, which says that county legislation shall be in compliance with this act. Honorable Speaker, meaning that if a certain county passes a certain legislation on rating, and there is a dispute in terms of application of that particular provision relating to a law in that county, then we have a check and balances in terms of the National Rating Act. So, Mr. Speaker, I encourage, personally as a lawyer, I encourage this kind of legislation, especially on matters that are devolved, so that in as much as county governments have powers to make law, then we should have a uniform national law to be able to check the excesses of a law that exists in the county government. Mr. Speaker, I beg to rest my case.
Honorable Toritich, the Parliament normally benefits from your wisdom. I know you are anxious to rest, but you are also a very experienced lawyer. If it is that the national government is to do laws cutting across all counties, then what would county assemblies be doing?
Honorable Speaker.
And number two,
yes,
just as you conclude, how would you deal with areas in which titles have not been issued, or areas where we have land group representatives, community lands? You know, areas like Masai land, areas like those vast areas of North.
That is,
and for that, don't hurry. You'll be added as many minutes as you want to clarify that.
Honorable Speaker, it is not only northeastern parts of this country that we have challenges of land that has not been adjudicated. Honorable Speaker, in my own county where I come from, Elgeyo Marakwet County, in particular my constituency, is that we have land that has not been demarcated, land that has not been adjudicated, and Honorable Speaker, we have no titles in those particular areas. We have faced challenges. For example, under the CDF, we are advised that you cannot allocate money to purchase land if there is no, we do not have, if that area is not, that school has no title deed. So we've had challenges in addressing such critical areas. And Mr. Speaker, I agree absolutely with you that in as much as we have this kind of legislation that purports to provide for property rates, we will experience the challenges in areas that has not been adjudicated. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we call upon the Committee of Lands, and the Vice Chair is here, to fast-track matters to do with land adjudication in this country and be able to issue titling. In fact, Honorable Speaker, where I come from, I have argued that the biggest challenge that we have on matters to do with conflict, armed conflict in our region, is because there is no absolutism in terms of ownership of property. So that land is communal, but the same is also not registered under the Community Land Act. So that if land was registered under the CLA, the Community Land Act, then it could provide some form of ownership. Mr. Speaker, I've argued that if the government is intentional in providing permanent solution to the issue of conflict, then one of the issues is to provide absolutism in terms of ownership of property, so that each person has a title of ownership of property. And an individual would be protective to his parcel of land in case of any attacks. And even it could be able to assist those people if they want to acquire securities. They use securities to get maybe loans in banks. So, Mr. Speaker, I also call upon the committee so that, because even if we pass this particular legislation in this House, and I pray that it passes because it's a good law, then this law will not be applicable to areas that have not been adjudicated, to areas that do not have title deeds. And I think that is the biggest weakness when it comes to the application of that law, because it means, because, Honorable Speaker, almost 60% of this country, 60% of the owners of land in this country have land that do not have, they are in possession, but they do not have ownership. They just demarcate and say this is our land, but they do not have the title of ownership. And this means that this law will apply to a section of this country and not the entire country as envisaged by this particular legislation. And I think that is a weakness that we must be able to address. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, you've raised a very fundamental issue. Article 191 talks about the issue of county governments making law. Honorable Speaker, we do not live in isolation. The boundaries created under the new Constitution 2010 is no longer new. I think it's a bit old. It's 13 years in effect. Are new boundaries. Honorable Speaker, these new boundaries separated communities that enjoyed certain cultural practices, certain rights, such that a particular county may pass a legislation that is offensive to another culture or that is offensive to another constituency. I mean, to another sub-county or another area. So, Chair, we should encourage cross-border legislations, especially on counties that share similar ideals. And I've read the standing orders of the National Assembly, which provide, I mean, of the county, most of the county governments, county assemblies, which provides of joint sittings between county assemblies of different county governments. And I encourage them to sit down and think of cross-border legislations so that we have a uniformity of legislations. Honorable Speaker, what is happening now in the county is a rush. What has been happening from 2010 to the current position is there has been a rush to make legislations to effect the fourth schedule on devolved functions. But these laws are a duplicity of other laws by the other county governments. Say that there's a lot of copy pasting by a certain county to make a law because the law provides, because the constitution provides that a function is devolved. I have given examples, Honorable Speaker. One was on liquor licensing. Different county governments have made different legislations on that subject, whereas we have the famous Mutuda law. So when it comes to interpretation by the courts of law, and these are two conflicting legislations. One is a national law that is in existence and was in existence before the coming of the county governments. Secondly, we have now county governments coming up with legislations on the same subject matter, so that when you go to court, there is a problem in terms with interpretation. And you know the law, the constitution has devolved lawmaking to county governments. So, Mr. Speaker, it is an area that we need to review. We need to relook at that issue in our constitution, so that we agree that if a national government has come up with a specific legislation, then there is no need to truncate it further to provide for other provisions which offend the national law. So, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, in my submission, my position and my opinion is this, because that matter has not been fully adjudicated. If a matter is devolved and Senate, which exists to protect the interest of the county governments, if the Senate has made or has proposed a certain bill, and that bill has been enacted procedurally as by law, and the county government makes another law on that particular subject matter, then the national law should prevail if it is a matter that has been devolved. So, Honorable Speaker, that could be my submission, because I have borrowed that, and I like the way this bill has been drafted. It is very clear under clause 7.2. Honorable Speaker, it says, county legislation shall be in compliance with this act, meaning this bill, so that even if the county government, because we cannot also deny them the power to make law, because it is provided for by the Constitution, but the national law should provide a similar, the national laws made by the Senate, because they deal with the county governments, should provide a similar provision in all its legislations, so that if the county government makes a legislation that involves a devolved function, and the Senate has made a similar legislation, then this clause that the county legislation shall be in compliance with this act, meaning in terms, because it has been made by the Senate, it's a Senate bill, then, Honorable Speaker, the national law should prevail. That is my submission, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Toroitich, and I hope the committee listened to you on those two aspects. As I have said, it's always very nice to listen to you. Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, the MP for Kwanza, and lay Cardinal Catholic Parish Parliament Branch.
At what? I didn't hear the last one. Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear the last one, but I want to thank you for this opportunity. I'm not speaking as a lawyer, and I'll speak as an ordinary Kenyan, because I have experienced a lot of this conflict, and I want to thank the leader of the majority for coming up with this bill. I think in the onset, there are a few things that he has mentioned that I feel, Mr. Speaker, we should be able to talk about. First and foremost, the fair rating by the county government for uniformity, and of course, favorism is bound to be there. And I think this is something that we are now going to get rid of, so that can be able to do things that are supposed to be modern. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I also saw, and I took note of that that we're going to have the dispute tribunal that is going to be set up in this bill, because currently, and we all know that most of the disputes that we have in this country are being solved by the collection of wazee. All men sit around and look at whatever it is, and of course, the one with a heavy heart, one with some pockets, heavy pockets, my speaker, you'll find that he take the day, because what would happen is a bit of an fair representation of the issue. And therefore, I think, given that we are going to have the dispute tribunal set up with this bill, I want to say that's the right thing to do. And of course, the other thing that I have noted, and I've got to agree, is that actually we have been solving the rates at which some of these cases are very many in this country. And more so, you'll find that when it comes to the judgment, I've got about 5 cases in my constituency, and I don't want to talk about them here because it's not the right place, but I have had 5 cases of land dispute because I come from the Rift Valley, and that's where the whites settled. And people came in and just grabbed land, because it depends on who you know in the area. And we've had cases like that, and today I'm having cases, 5 cases. I don't know what to do, because if I now let the county government sort out the dispute, Mr. Speaker, that will not be done properly. It will be favored. So that again is something that I think, you being a lawyer, and my friend here who has just spoken, being a lawyer, you know that. I think the way we are going is good, and of course, again, whatever we are going to set up would be evaluated after 5 years. Somebody say that it's going to be very expensive, but I think we have to move with the time, because things keep on changing. As they change, because we have to see what is not working, and therefore I quite agree that whatever you have put in this bill, that you will have evaluation of whatever we have put up after every 5 years. Mr. Speaker, I quite agree, because we are in dynamic position and everything else keep on changing. And lastly and not least, the fact that this bill has also gone through public participation. I think there's a lot of input from the public, because the wearer of the shoe knows exactly where it pinches. So the fact that it's actually been, they have had public participation on the same thing, I want to agree, because these are people who are learned. I've seen about 5 lawyers in the same, and therefore we will be able to look at it, and therefore not to worry about what will happen. The third reading of this bill will be able to then come in with amendments and some inputs that will be able to assist, because I'm seeing it the first time. I'm not a member of the committee, but I can see that there will be quite a number of things that will be able to change in the third reading. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, without wasting so much of the time and repeating myself and repeating what other people said, I think in all fairness, I think we should be able to pass this bill as it is, and then be able to have some amendment in the third reading. I support.
Honorable Wanyonyi, Honorable Mwenje. Did Honorable Mwenje leave? Let me search for Honorable Amos Mwago. You want to speak to this?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very crucial motion. And I start by stating that I support the bill on valuation and rating of properties. Mr. Speaker, you understand that the issue of land is very emotive in this country, and it has come a time when we have to address it once and for all. We have to move with speed and catch up with other countries in matters reforms on land. By doing so, I think the first thing we would have to do is we would have to fully digitize the whole issue of land in this country, so that at least we can be able to eradicate or reduce problems that emanate from land-related issues. We are seeing so many challenges with the conflict, areas in conflicts because of land, the issue of the coastal people, the issue of historical land injustices, the issues that now are coming out in these other areas where people are claiming, people are invading their communal lands, the pastoral lands that are there in the northeastern Kenyan and all the other areas. I think it is time now we fully digitize this land issue first, so that even when we want to do valuation, revaluation and this rating, we can be able to capture a broader bracket. Because right now, even if we are to do this valuation, we'll address only the people who have been perennially addressed by this rating. But I think in addressing the issue of collecting more revenue, I think it is only better that we try to do, as the honorable member has alluded, we try to fully get the absoluteness of ownership of land in this country. Even if you're not able to do it absolutely, but we can get at least a higher percentage that we can capture in the rating bracket. Also, my second issue on that, I think if we are to get this land fully digitized so that even people can access ownership anywhere in this country or even in other countries, those people who are in the diaspora who have invested in land in this country, we can even reduce the cases of land grabbing in our counties. Because with the openness that digitization has brought, you're able to access and know the status of your land anywhere you are. And I think that's the first step in the right direction. And we have seen these foreign companies have come to Kenya and mapped this Kenya. Like these companies that have offered these services of maps in our phones, you are able to trace a place, you're able to know how many kilometers from Kericho to Nairobi, you're able to trace a road, even the shortest of a road in the deepest of a ward, you're able to trace it. So it's only fair that the government invests resources in digitizing this matter, and it is possible, it is doable. As we have seen with Google Maps, as we have seen with other technology companies, they're able to trace things even in our villages, and they're not here in Kenya. So if the government invested more in digitizing this issue of land, I think you deal with that issue once and for all. My second issue, I seem not to agree with Majority Leader when he says that a higher story building will be charged more than the one that is being used for parking. I'm not a land economist, but I know for my county, I want to stimulate and incentivize investment. If I encourage the person that has a parking in the Nairobi city center, and that area can be developed and create more employment and more opportunities for our people by making him not pay, making him pay lower rates than the one that has a story building, I don't think we are attracting investment in this county. Because you need to understand, again, this person who has built a multi-story building is also caught in the rental income tax bracket. So it's actually a more contributor to the revenue of this country on a higher level than the person who, in actual sense, the person who has that open space should be the one who's been charged more so that they can be encouraged to bring investment and develop that area instead of having that land lying down. The other challenge, I think we have a challenge of the informal settlements. As my learned friend there, the lawyer, was saying about absoluteness in possession of land, I was wondering how these people in the informal settlements can get titles and start maybe paying rates. But also when you want them to pay rates, at what, you'll find an informal settlement in the middle of a very, let me say, a very expensive area. You'll find it in the middle of maybe a very posh estate. The value of land remains the same because the locality is the same. But the capability to pay of this person living in an informal settlement, they cannot be able to pay as that person living in that posh neighborhood. So I think they need to look some of those issues, because we don't like to have a situation that will be unfair to other people. The other issue that is of concern to me, even if we seek to collect more revenue for county governments, they also have to be accountable, and they also have to be creative. We have a lot of land lying idle in these counties that is not being utilized, and they don't pay rates for it. Why should we go and charge that mwananchi, even if we are supposed to pay rates? They should also come up with ways of utilizing these lands and making these lands profitable, and making these lands, making sure that these lands also earn revenue for them. There are so many agencies that also in this country have been allocated lands by the government, and that land is lying idle. And we know land is a factor of production. We are saying we're an agricultural country. Why don't we maximize the use of land in this country? When we were planting maize in Galakulalu, what happened to that? There are so many other creative ways that we can improve the productivity of this country, because we have a huge land mass. As much as we want to resort to rating and taxing, maybe collecting revenue from that, the county governments also need to be more creative in the manner that the land is utilized. There are situations where you have overcrowded markets, and behind those overcrowded markets are lands that are owned by agencies like the Kenya Railway that are not being used, which could be used which could be leased to these traders, and we collect more revenue from these traders on a daily basis. But that land has been lying there. For example, the land behind Mudhurwa Market and Marikiti Market. The land is purportedly owned by railways, but there's nothing that has been going on that land. And if you go to that road, that Helesarasi road, people are crowded up to where they are putting their wares on the road. They have actually used the half of the road to put their wares. The congestion there is on another level. We are asking the county governments to come out clearly and also support these people. This idle land that is lying around, let it be utilized fully so that people can benefit and they can also collect more revenue. Mr. Speaker, I also want to speak on the issue of fraud and land grabbing. I really want to address that issue because I have an issue. In my area of Pangani, there have been cases of where the people who had been issued with leases, some of those people maybe went back to their countries, some of them are foreigners, some of them maybe are not able to renew those leases. There are so many cartels that have come and they are harassing people so much and they are grabbing that land. And I think it is also good that even when you're doing these ratings, the valuation on rating, you check who's been paying the rates, and also the issue of titling has to go hand in hand with the issue of rates, because we are having a situation where a person decided, because the person who has a title has not been the one paying rates. So you find a case where a person has paid rates for over 10 years and then they claim the land to be their own, whereas the real owner of the land, the one who owns the lease or the title, has not been in the knowledge that this guy has been paying. So it's a very, very big issue in my constituency, and I would like, as we purpose to reevaluate the rating, we also need to make sure our people are sensitized so that they can know about the status of their lands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I submit.
Honorable Mwago, you are sitting. Do you have the bill?
I had read it.
Oh, you had read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm grateful for your contributions.
Thank you.
Do you have Honorable Phyllis Barto? I stepped out. Honorable Naomi Wako, the MP for Masabit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important bill on national rating, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, matters to do with land are normally very sensitive, and especially to Kenyans. It's very sensitive, and we know that many families have had issues, conflict and people have been fighting, others have lost their lives just because of land matters. And again, we know that land again is another gift that God has given us, because God has blessed this country with fertile land, but we are not making good use of the land, and we are not able to get enough of resources out of it. So I stand to support this, and I also know very well that Kenya's 2010 constitution is well, and it has captured very many things to do with matters land, and also suggests and also calls for complete overhaul on the matters to do with land and laws that regard matters to do with land. And so, Mr. Speaker, mine is just to say that I support, because of what this bill will do, because it is according to Article 209(5) of the Constitution that confers on Parliament powers to regulate the exercise of fiscal responsibility of the county government. And the principal object of the bill is to provide legislative framework for imposition of property taxes on land and building by county government pursuant to the same article that I have quoted. Mr. Speaker, I support the bill because, number one, it consolidates the Valuation of Rating Act, and number two, again, it identifies terms used in the existing acts to provide current definition of reflecting the current practice for the valuation of rateability, and I fully support, because when we put this into implementation, then Kenyans will have uniformity, and Kenyans will also have less problem, because currently we have a lot of challenges, as I said. Mr. Speaker, our country, again, needs a lot of revenue, and especially the different counties. We have 47 counties, but only a few collect their own revenue that can sustain or can help the counties to do some programs and develop, bring some development in their counties. And unfortunately, because we have not been collecting enough revenue, many counties have been suffering and continue suffering. So it is a way, it gives us the opportunity to weigh our own weight and see how we can create our own wealth and see how best we can give services to our people. Mr. Speaker, the bill will, when it is put into implementation or will be effected, will help people so that all the counties will have better way of collecting resources, that uniformity, and also better usage of the land that God has given each one of us. Mr. Speaker, I support, and it is my prayer that this will soon be passed and be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable Canon Naomi Wako. Honorable Joses Lelmengit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute on this bill. And I want to say that I support this rating bill. There is need for government to have reliable source of revenue, and this is a key principle of Kenya's devolution as provided in Article 175 of the Kenya's Constitution of Kenya. Again, the Article 209(3) empowers counties to impose property rates as a source of revenue. In the previous bill, rating bill, however, the existing legislation on rating does not provide adequate legislation to facilitate preparation of valuation roles and implementation. This rating bill, at the moment, gives guidelines and regulations that we got from public participation, international standards, so that it can give a uniform baseline for the county governments to implement. Examples on those are tabling of prepared draft valuation roles, which contain the owners of the parcels, properties, and also the details of properties. So a lot of thoughts went through this throughout. As a member of Lands Committee, we had an extensive input from professionals, valuers, surveyors, from across the board. And also on public participation. In this bill, it has been enhanced, where everyone almost from all sectors have been involved. Also, they've provided a shortened period of cycle of reviewing this land valuation. It is since independence, a few inputs have been put across this valuation bill, yet times are changing. But this one provides at least 5 years life cycle. And also county assemblies have been given an opportunity that they can extend for a period of not exceeding 2 years. So if a period of 7 years is substantial for this implementation of or review of this rating bill. One subject that I have to add across this that I thought it was omitted in this rating bill is the issue of land value capture, Mr. Speaker, where government would tax the developers, the property owners, where they've added value to property across around the area, where government has invested on road infrastructure, sewer lines, water access, and such. Those property owners and developers should at least pay more. I'll give an example, Mr. Speaker, on an area where we have a few meters, hundreds of meters apart, where the government has developed a particular area, say X. It has done good roads, it has done good sewer system, it has done provision of water, and there's another adjacent area where the government has not done, probably planning to do in the future, has not done such development of social amenities and such. Those two property owners should not pay the same rates, the same rates, sorry. So those are the areas that I think in this bill it should be looked into. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is I know with the digitization, with the current management information systems, with the current Artisasa platform that the Ministry of Lands has put in place, and they are trying to enhance and roll out across the country. These actually will minimize on fraudulent cases of land. Also, it would provide a more clearer picture on this rating, as the government will have access of real, I would say, location access of these land parcels, property that needs to be done rating or taxes levied. So I would want also to thank the Lands Committee for coming up with this proposal, for their contribution. I know they've worked hand in hand with the ministry, with the National Lands Commission, and other stakeholders. I want also to encourage every member in this House to support this bill, since it's a good bill, and as the government seeks to raise more revenue for developments, this is the bill that we need to say yes to it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Joseph Lelmegit. I recognize Honorable Paul Nzengu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to make my contribution on this bill, on the national rating bill. First, I want to appreciate the work that has been done by the chairperson of the committee. I think the wisdom is clearly recognized. The fact that we have been operating with a law that was enacted in 1956 and another one that was enacted in 1964 defeats the very fact that we have a new constitution. So I think by them aligning the law with the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is very important. And particularly the fact that now there is a plan to regulate and come up with a framework to really control land rates and land value is key. Mr. Speaker, our previous speaker talked about the frustrations that usually happen when county government, county assemblies are allowed to make the laws almost independent of the National Assembly. And this is not even isolated in the land issue. It is also in other matters that touch on revenue collection. You, for example, would find that a land that is has the same characteristic in Kajiado and in Kitui, the rate applicable are usually not uniformized. You will also find that in Kitui, for example, in areas which are a little bit more remote, like a town like Kuso, compared to a town like maybe Mwingi, the rates are more or less the same. So I think this bill is going to do a lot of justice, and I also compare that with areas or land that has mineral resources. For example, you find that in Kajiado they have limestone, and in Kitui they have limestone. But when the county assemblies enact the finance bill, you find a big discrepancy. For example, a ton of limestone in Kajiado could be 50 shillings. It could be 1,000 shillings in Kitui. So the investors who come and they want to invest in limestone, for example, or in the value addition of limestone, they find it difficult to go for the limestone in Kitui. The other, Mr. Speaker, the bill is going to help us in harmonizing that. The period of time that has been proposed for reevaluation of about 5 years, extendable to 2 years, is also a good period of time, because sometimes the land will probably remain like stagnating while we know that everything is changing. Right now, everything has been increased by just our passing of the finance bill, which has increased the price of fuel and has introduced new taxations. So that immediately triggers an increase in everything, and therefore land also cannot be isolated. The only issue I have is when we have a proposal saying that a building that is 5-story and another one that is single-story should be, the high-rise building should be charged more. Here we are talking about, then we could be talking about double taxation. We should tax the land independent of the property, because then there is also the property rate that property taxes that are usually levied on the same. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say from the very onset that I really support this bill, and also to say that if we can get this opening where there are cross-cutting issues, where the county assemblies are not supposed just to be, doing their own independent laws. When we can initiate a law from the National Assembly, goes to the Senate, and that law can be a benefit to all of us across all the counties, I think that is a good thing. I'm imagining that the tribunal will come up with a system where, again, like I said, if land in Elgeyo Marakwet has the same characteristic with land in Machakos or Makueni, then I think we should have a uniformized kind of rating so that Kenyans can benefit from the law at any corner of Kenya. I I support. Thank you.
Zengu, do you sit in this committee?
No, I don't.
Oh, I need a member of the committee to speak so that they can also elaborate on some issues. The Honorable Kaindi Paul Katana. I imagine you sit in the committee.
Yes, I do.
Make your contributions.
Thank you.
And you have all the time, in addition to the elaborate, presentations already made by the chair, to make the members understand this law in better detail.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. On the onset, I am in support of this bill because, as you have seen, Mr. Speaker, this the last time this land rate was done was 1965. So up to now, it is an outdated law. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, land issues are very emotive, especially at the coast. And with this valuation, with this rate, valuation rate, it will give our county governments an opportunity to have their own source of revenue. It is also going to assist because most of the large chunks of land, especially in coast, we call them the absent landlords. The land has been lying idle. It's not benefiting both the national and the county government. So with this bill, it will give an opportunity for our county government and the national government to make use of this bill and make sure that the rates for these idle lands and any other land that is within their jurisdiction gives them an opportunity to collect revenue. Mr. Speaker, with the digitization of properties, a lot of people have lost land because of because of there was no the people who are doing it manual, and we have seen that this one has also given an opportunity to some few individuals. I'll give you an example about the SGR issue. Some parcels of land were overvalued, and some parcels of land were undervalued because there's no uniformity of the valuation of land in our country. So this bill now will also give confidence to our investors because they'll have the opportunity, if they want to invest in Nairobi, they'll know the kind of rate that they're supposed to be paying. If they want to invest in Mombasa, they'll know what they're supposed to do. This one also will put aside the brokers of properties in our country, because a lot of people have been conned of their land because there's no consistent with the law. And I want to thank my committee and the chair, because for a very long time, even the National Land Commission, it gave us a very good input on this. The Minister of Lands, they'll now have an opportunity to make sure that, especially with the Ardhi Sasa, every land will be put into use. I've also taken note of that majority of the land in our rural areas are not yet adjudicated. So we will look for an amendment to make sure that they are not subjected to high rates because their land has not yet been adjudicated. So we look for them, I will look for a way to bring an amendment and also accommodate agricultural land so that we can also caution our farmers. The county government should even not rate this agricultural land to give a motivation to our farmers so that they can have a lot of input in food security. So this bill has come at the right time. And I hope my colleagues will also give their input and pass this bill because it has come at the right time and it can really be a game changer in our local authorities. And the governors also gave the input in the committee, which we accommodated. And if there is anybody who has maybe want to bring an amendment, they can approach the committee so that we can have a bill that will allow everybody to be a win-win situation. And after the passage of this bill, I encourage the local authorities' assemblies. They should also pass bylaws that are concurrent with this bill, so that both the national government and the county government, they speak in the same voice when it comes to the issue of land rating evaluation for our land. Mr. Speaker, with this bill, it will also give an opportunity to know all the banks, because for a very long time, people have manipulated valuation for properties, and banks have lost a lot of land because the valuation which is given is not exactly what that land should be. But with this act, even the valuers will be very careful to see the kind of valuation they're doing in every county. So even the banks will be safe with this bill. With these few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support the bill. I support the bill. Thank you.
Just a minute, Honorable Kaindi. In terms of ensuring there is no corruption by the valuers, what does the bill provide, or what is the committee recommending in their report in terms of the provisions which should be in the bill? I'm asking this question because you remember the last remark by the President about the National Land Commission. Mm-hmm. Okay.
What?
Are we making gods who are going to determine?
We are working on the value index to standardize the value index, because when the President said so, we also as a committee had a lot of problems, and there's a lot of petitions from the public, because I have used the SGR as an example. You might see the same place, the same area, yeah. Now, 1 acre from the other side is valued, its valuation is on the higher side. And from the left side, it is on the lower side. That one, it's a conflict of interest, but with this new rate, we'll now cap the valuers, because I'll know this particular county, the land rate or the valuation of this land is this one. So it is going to assist, it is going to stop corruption and manipulation of valuation report by surveyors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Paul Biego, the MP for Chisume, has stepped out briefly to attend to a national issue. The Honorable Abraham Kirwa, MP for Mosop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this bill on rating, national rating. Mr. Speaker, this for sure is a bill that has come at a timely manner when our nation is actually trying to digitalize registration of lands, at the same time to reduce the conflicts. And as such, I stand here, Mr. Speaker, to support this bill that has been discussed here at the same time from the Committee of Lands. This bill that we are discussing here is not going to be of any conflict between the national government at the same time with the county government. We know that most of the land issues has been devolved to county government. But what this bill does is to bring together both the two governments to make sure that we have a standardized rating system that is going to help this nation, so that now a land in Mombasa and a land in Eldoret, if it's going to be rated, it has a standard system on how the evaluators will go about in rating the land. At the moment, I think we don't have a standardized system. Anybody can rate land, but you don't know how it was rated. You may have a dispute. We don't have a tribunal that can actually attend to these tribunal issues. So this particular bill is helping to make sure that a lot of conflicts are reduced. At the same time, it helps us to bring a standardized system where most of the countries in the world do use those systems. So as such, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. There is a lot of good things on this bill that is going to actually bring, it addresses the issues of succession, it addresses the issues of freehold, it addresses the issue of royalties. It is a bill that has actually, it is due. And it's good for our nation, it is good for our country, and I want to commend the committee for coming up with this bill. And I think we should bring back this bill again to be discussed here for when we have a full house also, Mr. Speaker, because this is a very important bill that every member should actually read through it and understand, because it is good for the growth of this country, at the same time for the protection of those people who are going to buy land. At the same time, as we discuss about the rating, we cannot forget to discuss the issue of digitizing the title deeds in this country. There is a huge problem of title deeds. You will find one land with 2 or 3 titles at the same time. But if it was digitalized, and this digitalization will go together with valuation rating, then it will reduce the issue of corruption, where one land has 2 or 3 titles. I have a dispute in my constituency where there is a problem with the border. There is individuals who just along the Nandi escarpment. The owner of the land, the owners of the land have 2 or 3 different titles. One came to Nairobi, established, and was able to attain a title. Another one from the county government, they say the title, the border is this side. The other one says it's on this side. But we've sat down several times. This is an issue that has been going on for over 20 years. But on this matter, if this is established, the National Rating Bill will be able to address such issues and also allows us to do digitalization so that we don't have a problem like this where we are saying where actually is the border. And as such, I stand here, Mr. Speaker, to truly support the bill, National Rating Bill. And thank you again, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Kirwa. The Honorable Stephen Mogaka, MP for West Mugirango. It is true, Honorable Mogaka. I was questioning where your usual energy has disappeared to. I've been very, struggling to.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, yes, that is the usual me. I think money had been poured on this side of the earth so that I'm not heard by the nation. Yes, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this very, very important legislation, and I want to thank the committee chaired by my neighbor, Honorable Nyamoko, for thinking of and drafting a bill of this nature. As I intimated earlier, Mr. Speaker, the country has a constitution that requires that we be having 2 levels of government. And the respective functions of these levels of government are to be found in our Schedule 4 of the Constitution. And it may well be that some land is actually devolved, and therefore legislation relating to devolved land falls squarely within the capacity and jurisdiction of our county assemblies. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya is one nation, a unitary state, and to think of having a national law that standardizes the practices and rates that are going to apply to all land within Kenya is the most innovative kind of legislation that we must celebrate this committee for. Because all of us know that county governments and even the national government can only render as much services as the revenue they collect. And it is therefore extremely important that all corners of this republic benefit from a legislation that is going to enable the entire country be able to collect revenue. And having standardized these rates and practices within the Republic of Kenya, it creates certainty, particularly to investors coming into the country, and they will be knowing that whether they are investing in Turkana, Nyamira, or Kiambu, the law applicable is the law of Kenya and is comparable county to county. And this will also enable us maximize revenue collection and be able to stimulate the economic multiplier to make sure that we catch up with a 2-digit growth rate quickly enough. It is important also, Mr. Speaker, to also note that this law seeks to impose uniform practices by our valuers. Because I've been a practicing banker where you get valuers giving valuations for different purposes. There is a valuation for mortgage purposes. There is a valuation for open market sale purposes. There is a valuation for forced sale purposes when it goes to auctions. And there is also a valuation, I think, for sentimental purposes for those who are gambling and doing gambling with properties. But one challenge we have in this republic, which we cannot run away from, Mr. Speaker, is that land adjudication has not been expanded to the entire republic. So that although the titling of our land in Kenya is not complete, there is no land without an owner. Every land has an owner in this republic or are people claiming ownership on that land. And we should therefore, with this kind of bill, we should therefore innovate how to create ownership cards for parcels of land that have not been titled for purposes of rate collection and for purposes of the valuation law. So,
Honorable, what did you say we use in lieu of titles?
Mr. Speaker, I am saying that not all land in this republic is titled.
And what is that thing you said in law? I'm only asking you that question as a lawyer. You are saying areas which have not been titled, people should be given what?
They should be given ownership cards. Mr. Speaker, I was going there that most of the markets in this republic, starting from mine, the Nyabite market, go to Nyamaya market, go to Bonyunyu market, there are no ownership documents per se. There are ownership or cards that recognize possessory interest in certain market plots, which are used as the basis of collecting rent or rate from those particular owners, in quotes, or possessors of the council or county land that are in markets. So much so that this act, this bill, when it sees the light of day and becomes an act, should have that provision that persons who claim ownership or proprietary interest to any parcel of land should have some semblance of recognition for purposes of paying rates, because nobody should use land in this country. Nobody should possess land in this country without paying some form of rates. And this will, Mr. Speaker, incentivize those who are holding land that is not being utilized to consider leasing those parcels of land to those people who can use them for economic value, and by so doing, they will be collecting rent on those parcels of land, which will offset the rates that are going to be required to be paid. And I'm also happy that there is a tribunal inbuilt within this bill that is going to resolve any disputes that are going to arise out of this, because, Mr. Speaker, you know best how the courts are congested, and if litigation arising from this bill were to find their way to court registries, then we will be locked there until cows come home. I am also impressed, Mr. Speaker, to learn that with this bill, now those of us who are holding idle land will find that they will have to contribute to the rates of this republic, and this alone, Mr. Speaker, is sufficient incentive for all of us to put to use every land that is in our possession or ownership, so that as much land as possible in this country is put to economic use. I beg to support and thank the people of West Mugirango for sending me here, because with this now, I know my market at Nyabite, Kebirigo, Mobamba, all those markets are going to have a form of basis to pay rates, and that way the infrastructure and service delivery by Nyamira County is going to be improved. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to support.
I'm searching for Honorable Mark Mwenje, the MP for Embakasi West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First of all, from the onset, I think this bill is very timely, that it has taken long for us to actually bring such a bill to this House, and I'm proud that it actually finds me in this House. And especially, Honorable Speaker, the issues of land, unfortunately, have become matters that are split between national government and the counties. And I'm sorry to say, I don't think the counties have handled this matter as well as it should. So I believe this is the beginning of the national government starting to take charge. Honorable Speaker, just before I proceed, the Leader of Majority was moving this bill. He took a bit of a swipe at me and mentioned that I may not be too happy with him talking about some individuals in Roiro who will soon be paying rates. But I'd be quick to remind him, even in absentia, you know, the law is a double-edged sword. It applies to everyone. It cuts both ways. So anybody, it is not just the people who have been former presidents, even current presidents and future presidents, and big landowners will be subjected to this bill. So it is a good bill. And Honorable Speaker, the only concern that I think that we must, and it's good that the chair of the Lands Committee is here, my only concern is whether we might end up having a conflict with the counties on this issue. We wouldn't want this bill, after going through all this, we end up in court. So I'm hoping he's liaising properly with the legal team so that we don't have counties trying to fight us on this issue. But I want to support it. And this, Honorable Speaker, this is the reason why some of us refused to support the finance bill, or more importantly, why I was opposed to the housing levy. Because, Honorable Speaker, for us in Nairobi, and more so for a ward in my constituency, known as Molem, I want those people to be given title deeds. They don't have. That ward has 89,000 people, and yet about 65% of it is unadjudicated. They don't have titles, so they don't pay rates. If you could give those people title deeds and collect the rates as per this bill, I assure you the 1.5% you are seeking, in that ward of mine alone, you will collect more money than you needed from the entire Nairobi, just for that 1 year. That is something I can assure you, because I'm telling you, it is the third most populous ward in Nairobi, and yet so many of us have developed there, we don't have title deeds. So this, when we spoke about expanding the tax base, this is the perfect example, where people will appreciate that when you give them the title deeds and you collect the rates, and something that the committee must think about, and I'll be present here to contribute, especially during the committee stage. How do you collect rates from land that does not have titles? But the people are there. They are benefiting from sewage, from water, from street lighting. And if you start charging them rates, it gives them a sense of ownership of that certain piece of land that they have there. They are demanding for roads and all these things. It is something that maybe the committee, I'm sorry, maybe during public participation, that would have been the right place to bring in this issue. But it is worth considering, especially when we are talking about regularization in Nairobi, where people have built houses on land that some people claim it is theirs, where nobody is claiming. I'd ask the land committee, be bold, be brave. I have a motion coming. Give people those titles where nobody is claiming. Where there is a dispute, let us have a regularization plan where we give these people titles and eventually you get to collect your rates. If you were to do this, you'd not even be thinking of the 16% VAT on fuel. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of developed land and undeveloped. And that is very key, even right here in the CBD. We might not agree, even as members of parliament in Nairobi, even my colleague from Starehe, because there are parcels of land in Nairobi that are undeveloped. You have one that is used as a parking area right next to the High Court. Very prime. The value of that land is probably 3 to 4 billion Kenya shillings an acre. And right next to it, you have Reinsurance Plaza, you have KCB. Should these two plots of land be paying the same rates? I don't think so. Of course, you don't want to punish the person who's not developed, but you ought to push them a little bit so that they're encouraged to develop that certain piece of land. So how we are going to look about rating even across Nairobi is something very key. And one of the biggest problems, Honorable Speaker, we have in this county government, I am an advocate. I was admitted in 2012. I've practiced now for over 10 years. I can assure you, there are parcels of land that we are still trying to get their rates. And it depends with the officer that you see at the Ministry of, at City Hall. So one, you'll be told to pay 10,000. Another one will ask you for 100,000. And in between there, the kickbacks are more than even what goes to the county government, what is collected. That is one of the biggest problems that we have with the county. So that is why this bill is so timely. It is so timely that we can now start thinking of if we're going to charge rates different, especially in Kiambu, Nyeri. I wish those members were here. Honorable Speaker, Kiambu is in danger of losing all its agricultural land. In fact, I expect the only areas going to be left is the sides of Limuru on that other side. This other side, all of it is disappearing to developments. Nyeri is suffering the same problem, same as Muranga, all the subdivisions. Honorable Speaker, even the land that my grandfather left has been subdivided between my grandfather's children, my father and my uncles. And this is one of the things that we want to discourage. And I believe how we deal with this bill, it is going to assist us. How do we ensure that we even reward those people who dedicate certain portions of their land and have decided to plant trees. They've literally created a forest on their piece of land. I believe this rating act should reward those people in light of climate change. So, Honorable Speaker, I know there are members who want to contribute, and I'm looking at the time because I think they deserve 10 minutes each.
Don't worry about time. I know Honorable Mawade will be speaking next, followed by Honorable Nabulindo.
Yes.
And then whether Parliament likes it or not, we will adjourn for reasons that you know. Look at clause 16 of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me here. Perhaps you would remind me what it reads.
Yeah, it says I should never do, but it says the system for payment of rates will be established by the county executive committee. I want your view on this because you are saying the counties are collecting a lot of money and expecting a lot of money from the national government.
Correct.
But the money they collect, you know the report of the auditor concerning the last, 2 county governments of Nairobi.
Yes.
Over 18 billion or so alleged to have been lost. Should this system be developed by the respective county executive committees?
I think, Honorable Speaker.
Or Kenya Revenue Authority, if we are expanding the tax base and we want this money to be accountably, remitted to the national kitty?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have a direct answer for that issue. We've already given this. The counties, as we speak today, have the mandate for collecting these rates. They have failed, Honorable Speaker. As an advocate, I can tell you for sure, I have struggled, especially with parcels of land coming from Eastlands, or parcels of land where we could not find a rates clearance certificate for the last 5 years or so. So you end up in a situation where you have to bribe your way in order to get this clearance for City Hall. Honorable Speaker, if we can allow, the Kenya Revenue Authority has good established mechanisms, and we've just recruited even more individuals who are supposed to assist with tax collection. I think it is important for the committee to relook at this. As long as just 1 minute. One minute. As long as we
Who is sabotaging Honorable Mwenje and for what reasons? Let him have the mic.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'll just speak for 1 minute. As long as we can effectively collect, and I think KRA has done it effectively. I know the counties might want to compete with us, but KRA is better placed. And more importantly, we saw it especially here in Nairobi, when Mike Sonko was the governor, and he agreed to hand over some of these services to KRA. And at that point, even when NMS came into place, there was more effective collection of rates and revenue, especially in Nairobi. So, Honorable Speaker, I think this is a bill that could change the face of this country, could collect the revenue that is needed for the counties, so that we ensure the counties are not complaining they don't have funds. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mwenje. Honorable Julius Mawate, you are recognized. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start off by saying that I stand to support this bill. This bill is very timely. This bill is long overdue because it formulates a single bill that covers and governs the entire country. That way we are able to collect bill as a country. The rates might be different, but the bill and the law that oversees and controls the collection of rates shall be one. As we talk about the issue of collecting rates, there are so many parcels of land that in Kenya that the owners don't have title deeds. Some large parcels of land, some small parcels of land, and yet they don't have title deeds. How will you be able to collect rates without issuing title and knowing the owner of that title. The best thing, the first thing as we think about this is to make sure that we fast track the issuance of title. That way, when you collect rates, you're collecting rates from the from the correct person. Some of this delay in the issuance of titles have caused double issuance, or rather double, have actually encouraged, land grabbing. Because since the land doesn't have a title, and somebody who has influence sees an empty land that doesn't have title, then they go to the land's office and start fighting for that piece of land that might be owned or might belong to a low income or a poor person. Hence, you end up with 2 title deeds. Mr. Speaker, I'll use the example of the people in my constituency. It's about time that the government issued titles to the people of Mukuru-Kwa-Njenga. It's about time that the government issued titles to the people of Mukuru-Kwa-Ruben. Once you give them the title, they will be able maybe go to a bank and build, borrow money and build. People of Riera don't have title deeds. And a majority of Embakasi South, we have challenges of accessing title deeds. They have so many squabbles, so many fights. You saw a year and a half ago, demolitions, illegal demolitions happening in Mukuru-Kwa-Njenga, supposedly in the name of building a road. It turned out that some people were misled and some unscrupulous, corrupt people at 2 ministries within the government chose to just kill its own citizens only in the name of land, in the name of soil. They murdered so many people who were fighting to retain their land in Mukuru-Kwa-Njenga. It's about time now that we have a different government, that these people are recognized as the title owners, and they have the necessary. People have been there, living there for the last 60, 57 years. Somebody's ID on the backside, as one of the sergeants came and told them, one of the inspectors came and told them, and I quote, "Angalia nyuma ID yako na uhure." Meaning, look where you come from, look at where you come from on the back of your ID. I have give an example of a lady called, I choose not to use her name, but there's a lady that's been there for the last 50, about 50 years. She's about 58 years old. The back of her ID says her village is Mukuru. Her sub-location is Mukuru-Kwa-Njenga. Location, Mukuru-Kwa-Njenga. And the division, Embakasi. Sorry, there's a district, Embakasi. And then division, Embakasi. Nairobi. She was born there. Where should she go when you tell her, and I quote, "Tutakubomolea"? You can do whatever you want to do. So it's about time, as we talk about this nice bill on rates, we also, first of all, consider issuing title deeds to our fellow Kenyans, wherever they may be. And as we talk about these rates, as you now might be aiming at specific individuals, it cuts both ways. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Moade, the Honorable Oscar Nabulindo. Why am I not getting you?
He doesn't exist.
Yeah, you have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this good motion and a good law And I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee that has worked tirelessly up to this level that they have been able to bring this legislation on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, this is a very timely and important legislation in this country, especially at this time when the government of the day is struggling to collect taxes and rates from the public to be able to implement its programs. Mr. Speaker, when you talk about land in this country is a very big issue because it is the basis of our economic prosperity everywhere in this country. And it is known all over Africa and in East Africa that Kenyans really appreciate the value of land. And therefore, this legislation will really go a long way in making regulation over land rates that will help the county government and the national government on how to levy tax on lands. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are in the era of whereby we have county governments that are strongly depending on the national government for their revenue to run the county government. And actually, that's not supposed to be the case. The county governments are supposed to be semi-autonomous or autonomous in terms of economy. But unfortunately, we are living in a country where almost all the counties, including Nairobi and Mombasa, which are big counties with strong economies, they are still depending on the national government to run the affairs of their counties. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, there is need for the counties to enhance and improve and regularize their tax collection. And that begins with the land, the issue of land and land rates. Mr. Speaker, but the county government or the national government cannot place good rates or levies on land that does not have proper ownership. The problem in this country is most of the Kenyans and most of the businesses do not have proper documentation of the land to show ownership. For example, almost 60% of all the schools in this country do not have ownership documents on the land on which they sit. And therefore, they cannot be taxed or they cannot pay rates because there's no documentation to show ownership. Mr. Speaker, the only way that we shall register growth in the counties is if the counties are able to collect enough revenue to run their affairs. We have seen in very many places, if the government delays to disburse funds to the counties, even for a month or 2 months, the counties actually go on their knees. And the governors are always crying that they want to shut down the counties. And one asks, what happens to the money that the counties collect? Unfortunately, in this country, counties, we don't have any strong oversight in the counties, Mr. Speaker. The MCAs who are supposed to oversight the governors, they are mostly compromised, they are weak in their oversight, and when it comes to the Senate, which actually has the mandate by the Constitution to oversight the counties, the Senate is even weaker. We have seen in most cases where the Senate summons a governor to come before the Senate to answer to a few questions, and the governor will blatantly decline, and the Senate cannot do anything about it. That shows actually we are having a toothless institution which is supposed to be actually oversighting a very powerful institution called the county government. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill talks about also the valuation process and the valuer and the regulations that go with that. Mr. Speaker, the problem in Kenya is actually the valuation process. In most counties, even now, the valuation that we have was done almost 10 years ago. And therefore, it is difficult to get enough revenue or the rightful revenue if the valuation of a certain particular land is that of 10 years ago. For example, even in counties, in the sub-counties, in the constituencies, the valuation was done a long time ago. I can give you an example of Matungu constituency. Valuation was done in 2014, and since then, another valuation has not been done. So at 1 acre of land, the valuation was put at 400,000. But right now, the owners of the land are doing at almost 1 million per acre. But there is no valuation, so there is no way you can do a proper rating with the valuation that is outdated. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with this law, I believe that we are going to have proper valuation, good valuers, and we are going to get the rightful value of the land that we are dealing with. Mr. Speaker, to finish my contribution, I would like to say that as the committee goes back to look at the views that members have given, and when they come back to the House, we are expecting to see good amendments, and we are going to support the bill so that we come up with a good law that is going to help the counties and the national government to be able to raise enough revenue from land and land-related properties and ownership in this country. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg support.
Honorable Nabulindo, do you sit in this committee?
No, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yes, I'm an interested party.
I was asking that because one thing I love in this bill is its definition of rateable owner.
Yes.
And it says for you to be a rateable owner, you must be the registered owner of the property. I remember when the CS land was here, so many MPs were asking about when their areas will be titled.
Yes, sir.
So the bill appears to indicate that those areas which have not been titled will not be paying rates. And I think that is how it should be. So maybe the committee should move as fast as possible, in my view, and ensure that those areas are titled. Areas like those Nyanza areas which have not been titled, move now with speed if you want them to pay rates, which are taxes on land, to be titled immediately. And I'm also happy with your presentation that we should have very clear criteria.
Yes.
Very clear criteria.
Yes.
Or criterion around the rates and the evaluation.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The debate on the bill will continue. Honorable members. Order. Honorable members, the time being 7 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, 26 July 2023 at 9:30 a.m.
contingent of issues to discuss this morning, among them bills and the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill of the National Assembly, Bill number 3 of 2023, the bill that is brought by Honorable Rueda Obo, the Member of Parliament for Lamu. This bill, which considers the conservation and management of wildlife, is expected to bring a raft of issues and changes when it comes to policies concerning conservations and management of wild animals. The objective of the bill is to amend the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act, that of number 47 of 2013, in order to include the sharks, the stonefish, and whales, and stingrays among the wildlife species. This is in respect of compensation as a result of death and injuries that sometimes are caused by these animals and may be compensated. This bill will ensure that the persons who live along the water bodies in places where water counties and constituencies where it touches the water bodies, who live along water bodies are entitled to the payments of compensations as a result of death and injury from the specified wildlife species. And the bill does not delegate legislative powers, nor does it limit fundamental rights and freedom. The bill also does not concern county governments, that is in terms of Article 109(5) of the Constitution, as it does not contain provisions that affect the functions and maybe powers of the county governments as set out in the 4th schedule of the Constitution. Also the 4th schedule of the Constitution that also provide the protection of the environment as well as the protections of animals and wildlife as its national government function. The enactment of this bill shall not occasionally add additional expenditure of the public funds. That is the first considerations today on the order paper. And secondly, there is the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Bill, that of the National Assembly, number 5 of 2023. This is the bill that was brought by Makalu Mulu, the Member of Parliament for Kitui Central. The bill is in its first reading. And the objective of the bill is to amend the Parliamentary Pensions Act, that of CAP 196. It proposes to raise the amount of pension due to former members of parliament who served between maybe 1st July 1984 and 1st January 2001 to a minimum sum of Kenya shillings 100,000. This is in light of the fact that despite serving the nation as a member of parliament and representing the people from the constituencies that they were elected in, some former members of parliament are languishing in poverty, and there is need to take care of their welfare. The changes also are in line with the recommendations of Akiwumi Tribunal, which was appointed in January 2009 by the Parliamentary Service Commission to review the terms and conditions of service of the members and employees of Parliament. The tribunal had submitted its report in November 19, 2009, in which one of the recommendations was that the 500 former members of Parliament to be paid the equivalent of 100,000 each as living persons with effective 1st July 2010. That is, the Parliamentary Service Commission adopted the report in June 2010 and resolved that any of the said former members of Parliament earning a monthly pension of less than 100,000 shillings to be paid a monthly pension of 100,000 shillings. The clause 2 of the bill also provides the amendment to Section 8 of the Act that provides that former members of Parliament who, having served in Parliament between 1st July and 1st January of 2001, should be entitled to pension, and whose monthly pension amounts to not less than to 100,000 shillings. And this bill does not delegate legislative powers, and it does not limit rights and fundamental freedoms in the Bill of Rights. On the statements whether the bill concerns county government, this bill by Makali Mulu, the Member of Parliament for Kitui Central, which is in its first reading, does not concern county governments in terms of Article 110(1)(a) of the Constitution, as it does not affect the functions and powers of county governments under the 4th schedule to the Constitution. The statement on whether the bill is a money bill within the meaning of Article 114 of the Constitution. The enactment of the bill shall occasion an additional expenditure of public funds. It was dated